Alright lads, what is the crack? This is Emmett, you're listening to another episode of the From the Depths podcast. And yeah, you're very, very welcome to another episode of the show. Episode number 7, I do believe, of the podcast. And yeah, as you can probably tell from the title of this week's episode, we're going to be talking about some of our favourite debut albums in the history of metal. And you may immediately find yourself asking, well Emmett, who's we that we're referring to? Well, this past Friday I sat down over Zoom, given the social distance times that we live in, and I chatted away with a few mates about that very topic. We chatted away for over 2 hours about some of our favourite debuts in the history of metal. And my hat goes off to the lads. It'd be very easy, given the topic, to quickly mention the likes of like Maiden and Sabbath. And although they are mentioned everything like that, the lads really did have a great selection of choices throughout the panel. It's the very first of the panel style podcasts, which is something I've name dropped and mentioned a few times in earlier episodes. But we finally have the ball rolling with these. And as you can probably also see from the title, this is actually only part 1 of our panel discussions covering this topic. We will return to this topic again in a few weeks' time. I'm just quite cautious that there's a lot of information. The lads throw out so much information, facts and stuff like that about the albums that they mention, that I kind of want to give a bit of breathing space to everyone that was partaking in the panel last week, to kind of come away and kind of regroup in a few weeks and see what else we could talk about and stuff like that. So yeah, so this is part 1 of our discussion of favourite metal debuts of all time, and we had some great crack putting this together, lads, and really hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we had great crack actually putting it together. Now, while I have you, I must say, before we go and press the old play button on that, I have a bit of housekeeping to do. I'll get the From the Depths bits out of the way first. If you have been enjoying the podcast, if this is your first time on the podcast, you're very, very welcome. Happy to have you here and all that kind of crack. If you want to support us in any way, you can do so by following us on Instagram. It's at From the Depths Metal, and you can follow us on Facebook at From the Depths Metal Radio. As well as that, I host a weekly radio show entitled From the Depths, which is the namesake of the podcast, which airs every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Wired 99.9 FM, Limerick's only fully licensed student radio station. And yeah, I basically just sit down for an hour over there and I play a bit of what I've been listening to throughout the week, and we have a bit of crack doing it. Been doing that for over a year now at Wired FM. Very much enjoy putting those shows together, and in the same vein as the podcast, I very much look forward to putting those shows together for the foreseeable future also. A little bit of different housekeeping of sorts before we get into the podcasting this week. I want to give a quick shout out to a fundraiser initiative that was started by the lads in Limerick metal band Zephyr. They're fundraising, I should say, in commemoration of their friend Danny McDonough, who unfortunately passed away as a result of suicide just shy of a year ago. The fundraiser is in aid of Pieta House, and the lads only launched it. It is Sunday. I'm recording this little bit of the podcast anyway. The lads only launched it maybe yesterday, the day before, with a small, modest goal of 500, and they quickly blew that. They blew the doors down on that, and they've now upped it to 1,000, and they are a good bit of the way there. So if you'd like to support that, hop on over to the Zephyr page on Facebook, and the links and everything are there. I also have it shared on the From the Depths Facebook page also. So if you want to go, if you're in a position to where you can throw a few euros towards the lads, please do. It's a great cause. They're donating all the money to Pieta House. And particularly in the times that we are living in now, the work that all the men and women in Pieta House do for the service users and stuff like that is greatly appreciated and greatly needed. So any money towards that would be absolutely fantastic. As well as that, I can also announce now, to talk a little bit more about the fundraiser and how they've been keeping busy throughout the pandemic, the lads in Zephyr will actually be the guests on next week's episode of the podcast. So yeah, you can look forward to that too. We'll find out a little bit more about the fundraiser, might get some stories about the relationship with Danny and how they've been keeping busy over lockdown and all that type of crack. So yeah, that's next week. Let's get back to this week. This week, like I was saying, I had a few mates on. We chatted about some of our favourite debuts in the history of metal, and we had some Savage Crack doing it. So yeah, this is going to sound like a very awkward intro. There was an intro recorded for this. I listened back to it, and I wasn't happy with how I sounded in it, so I've actually cut it out. So you're going to be met with the immediate sounds of Mr. John Dunn, the baba of the group, lads. So yeah, this is part one of our panel discussion on favourite debuts in the history of metal, lads. This is Emmett, enjoy, and I will catch you again next week.
What's the story, boys? John Dunn here, the youngest of probably everybody in
entire metal scene of Ireland.
Pretty much, yeah, probably the youngest.
We're actually celebrating his confirmation today.
Yeah, just got the money there into the credit union there, so I won't be touching that for a few years. Buy myself a TV or something, you know. But yeah, that's me. You know, Dublin lad. You know, that's it. I guess I don't know what else to say. I know me metal, I guess.
Yeah, I'm Chris, also Dublin lad, not nearly as young as John, unfortunately. But yeah, again, just sort of know my metal, no other qualification to be on here. But looking forward to talking shite about some of my favourite albums anyway.
Okay, repping the north here, Matthew, and unlike everyone else here, people have actually paid to hear my opinions on metal before. You'll know me for Mortal Front Zine.
No one's saying that.
Everybody else.
Hey, I'm John. I'm from the north of England originally. I'm a millennial like Matthew. Some of you here might know my journalism with Excuse the Blood. You can find at excusetheblood.org. And yeah, glad to be on with Emmett tonight and the rest of the lads, and look forward to talking about a few albums.
So yeah, I'm Paddy. Second youngest here. Thankfully, John stole that title because I was getting the crap for ages. But anyway, yeah, I'm one of the Dublin lads. Happy to be on here. Thanks for the invite again, Emmett. And up for listening, talking about some class albums.
All right, that's the most awkward part of the way now. That's the worst part
God
of doing
for
it.
That's the worst part there. Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, the topic of this week's panel, or the first panel, is we're talking about some of our favorite debut albums in the history of metal, and there may be some honorable mentions, maybe from one or two other genres mentioned throughout. So what we're going to do, kicking off, we agreed on this just before we went on. So the baby of the bunch, Mr. John, is going to kick it off now for us on this week's one. Go on, work away, man.
Yeah, that's this was a hard thing to do. I was spending a few days doing this. I narrowed it down to about 12, 13, but obviously can't be talking about all these albums now. So I think everyone here would agree with me that Merciful Fate's debut, Melissa, is unequivocally absolute classic record. Every song on that album is, you know, from beginning to end, you know, songs like Evil, Curse of Pharaohs to start the record, unbelievable. It just gets you right into it. You know, especially it's like, you know, an album like this coming out in 83 is just, you know, there wasn't really much sounding like this at the time. So it was, as well as it being a classic debut record, it kind of like pushed sounds forward and obviously inspired a lot of different people, you know, going into the second wave black metal and all that type of thing. But I'd say, yeah, just, you know, classic songs, beginning to end. That's, you know, definitely a pick. I'd say it's essential for any metal listeners, like experience of the genre, if you get me.
Yep,
100%.
on something really important now straight away. My barometer when I was doing my shortlist was look at the track list. Can I sing the chorus or hum the main riff of every song on this record? That's one of them. Helps that there's only, was it 7 tracks? Because, you know, some of them are fairly long.
Yeah, 7. I think the longest is
like
Satan's Fall is like 9 minutes long, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
Saints
11
Fall
or
is
12 nearly, I think.
13 minutes, I think. Yeah, I just looked up it. Oh no, 11:26. So yeah, that's a long song.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the impressive thing about Merciful Fate is that they were like a proto black metal band in a way, but they were also like kind of like Rush, prog rocky kind of stuff at the same time with the long songs and real complex fucking arrangements and everything. Yeah, no, that's a savage album. I actually like Don't Break the Oath better myself, but
Yeah, I
mean,
would be the same. I heard that first, but obviously both are great records. So
Melissa's actually always been the one I've preferred over the both incredible albums now, but just Melissa's always been that little bit higher for me,
I always
that's
found the
not-
origins of Merciful Fate really interesting, and how the sound that they got during Melissa came to be. There's the two, is it Hank Sherman and Michael Denner, the two main guitarists?
Yeah.
They had a band called Brats, which was stuck between, let's just say, being influenced very heavily by early new wave of British heavy metal, but then also like by power pop, let's say the more bubblegum stuff by Kiss, and then bands like Cheap Trick. They did an album called
Like Cars, shit like that, yeah.
And stylistically, it is different from the more operatic kind of material that you get once they got King Diamond at the helm. But some of the technicality and complexity that you hear with Bratz, you can definitely sense that that's kind of going to carry itself over when they became Merciful Fate.
Yeah, that Bratz album is kind of interesting. That's another great first album, actually. But yeah, it's sort of like you can hear some of the songs on there, like Punk Fashion, are very like sort of 77 punk rock stuff that are obviously from their early days. And then you can hear like the more like Merciful Fate kind of like complex, longer, heavier songs come in as well, with stuff like Pinned on My Eyelids and whatever.
And it wouldn't be that shocking to hear that record in '83, because there was a kind of transitional period. You know, they had the EP and the BBC session, which I'm not sure if you've heard, but go and check that out. They did a session with the BBC Rock Show with Tommy Vance in '82, I think.
Never knew that, actually.
Oh, I've never heard it.
Go check it out for sure, yeah.
Daddy.
I think it's... I'm trying to remember if there may be like a demo, like an early demo version of at least one of the songs on Melissa. Mostly, obviously, it's the 4 tracks from the EP. But it's well worth listening to. But
I think
things obviously things just really coalesced on that first record, because it must have been an absolute bastard trying to record vocals like that, which had never really been done on a rock record before that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So I have a few more that obviously I think everyone here would 100% agree with me that Obsessed with Cruelty, undeniable. Especially Steve Hammer version. I think that is the superior version. The riffs, man. Like, After the Deluge, I think that song alone just like cements that as the best Sodom release, in my opinion. That song is brilliant. And I think that album gets a lot of shit, obviously. Bad, well, in comparison to later material like Agent Orange, etc. Bad recording quality. I don't know, maybe like less kind of sing-alongy songs. I think a bit more kind of I don't know, I say avant-garde in regards to like trash that was happening at the time. But I definitely think that record gets overlooked a lot because of recording quality, and I definitely think that as a debut record, unbelievable record. And it just cements Sodom as the best thrash band in my mind. So
honestly, I think the recording quality adds to the album.
No, definitely, I agree. It's just I think it pushes people away.
The absolute, just the filthiness of it really kind of exemplifies a lot of the tracks on it. Like with Proselytism Real, for example, considering it's a lot slower compared to a lot of the other material on the album, it really kind of just how do I put it? It really just like it adds a completely different dynamic to the album. Like that kind of variety really is what cements it for me.
Well, it has a very, very murky and unpolished atmosphere throughout, and a lot of it's executed in a very over-the-top fashion. And I mean, one of the signature songs on it's called "Death Like Silence," and you listen to that, and it's from 1985. Then you listen later on to I don't know, some band called Mayhem, and the very person behind Mayhem, Euronymous, start the label with the name "Death Like Silence." So it kind of, that's a testament to how kind of influential it was in many respects.
Do you know there's actually 4 or 5 underground labels that took their names from either Obsessed by Cruelty or In the Sign of Evil.
Really?
Wow,
Yeah,
that's insane.
very very strange coincidence.
Yeah, I
Does anyone
listened to.
remember?
Sorry.
Does anyone know off the top of their heads? Was Bathory's second album 85 or was that 84?
That's 85.
85.
Yeah.
85,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, Proselytism Real is very similar vibe to the second Bathory
Yeah.
album.
Absolutely.
Definitely, yeah.
Lower
I
Dimir
would have to
vibes.
agree.
Yeah, I
Which
listened to
separates
Obsessed by.
it completely from burgeoning thrash. You know, it's a black metal album, nothing else really to
Oh,
me.
definitely, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, like I don't know, the riffs just doesn't seem like, I don't know, any of the shite like Sacred Reich and stuff that people like that I think is
Yeah, there's
garbage in
really
my opinion. But
no commonality between them.
no, exactly. But
Yeah.
But speaking of early thrash, this is also another record that you all agree with. Shaun of Mercy Slayer, unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
So
Best-
it's a speed
best
metal
Slayer, in my
record, not a
opinion.
thrash record. That's
yeah, it is
if
a
you want to
speed
know the
metal
difference
record.
between the two
Yeah.
genres, listen to Show No Mercy. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I obviously no hate on Hell Awaits, unbelievable album as well. But
It's
Show
Show No
of
Mercy is
would
what
be my favorite.
the No album would have sounded like if cocaine was more readily available in England at the time.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
won't even deny that. Yeah. I don't know. I think everyone here probably had that on their list. That's
It was the
Oh, yeah.
number one.
one of the greatest records. You can see there behind me on the video. One of the greatest records of all time, in my opinion. I listen to it probably at least 3 times a week.
There's
So
Zoomer
good.
John hanging his records up on the wall again.
Listen, fucking need to get the girls over with the Mac DeMarco records, man. What are you talking about?
But that's a good point to make though about like I was thinking there as you were saying that, right, about debut thrash albums, right? And there's like you can tell the difference, I'd say, between a good debut thrash album and a bad thrash album, depending on the influence, right? Like when you look at all those first wave thrash bands, right, it's all a blending of like the new wave British heavy metal and like the hardcore punk scene at the time. And I'd nearly
Definitely.
argue you can judge whether or not a thrash band's debut was good or bad on how much more it's influenced by new British heavy metal sound and stuff than by punk albums. Because the punkier it's like, I'm not a big fan of crossover thrash at all. Like I listened to Billy DRI when I was younger, but that's about it. Like, but a lot of those like Sacred Reich and stuff like that, they sound to be influenced way more by like, I don't know. I would always say like Dictate, they sound like they're influenced way more by American hardcore than they are by the new wave British heavy metal bands. And then you look at those thrash bands that are influenced by new album, like Slayer's first album, Kill 'Em All by Metallica is another one. Like the new album influences slaps you in the face in that one, like, do you know what I mean? And I just think you can tell whether or not an album is going to be good based on the influence. You can hear that influence straight away. Like I'm after waffling
100%, yeah.
there now.
I need to stick up for American hardcore there a little bit, because part of the problem there is I think some bands like Sacred Reich, they were really formed until after like 83, 84 when those first records came out. So they were influenced by the first thrash records, not so they weren't there at that.
Yeah, I get you.
Point between the melding of genres, you know, they probably didn't even give a shit about no album at all.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I also
Yeah.
think there are some great like sort of thrash and speed metal records that were more heavily influenced by the hardcore stuff as well, like Enemies, Unholy Death springs to mind
Yeah.
as a
Great
brilliant,
album,
like
yeah.
really punky sort of hardcore or punky heavy metal record, speed metal record. And I think that's genius. But it sounds, in terms of the punk, it sounds closer to maybe like the Exploited or GBH than any of the American stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
A great crossover record for me is Game Over by Nuclear Assault.
That's a great album, yeah.
Great album, yeah. Nuclear Assault to be like my exception when it comes to crossover.
I think Nuclear Assault and maybe 2 songs by DRI and maybe like 3 songs by Suicidal Tendencies are like the only.
Suicidal Tendencies
are
was
great.
savage.
Okay, so
A really
I'll
great
rephrase
band
that.
as well from New York was Crumbsuckers as well.
Crumbsuckers are good too. Yeah, I know bands like Dark Throne had a big influence from Crumbsuckers and stuff, especially with the Salsa Journey and the recording they were doing after that, which eventually turned into Goat Lord or whatever it was, the death metal album they put out in like 96 or something.
96
But,
was when it finally got released, yeah.
Yeah, Goat Lord 96.
Another great band, and some consider them the ultimate of it. would be Cro-Mags from New York.
They're good,
Grow
yeah.
Up is a great band.
The only
not-
reason why Age of Quarrel didn't make my list is because this was supposed to be a heavy metal conversation, not
Yeah.
hardcore punk or crossover conversation.
Yeah, I have a
But
few
it's
records.
absolutely one of the best debuts ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
I guess when you
Speak-
get to thrash, though, it's always going to come up, isn't it? You kind of can't talk about thrash without talking about hardcore too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Quick thing I was about to say just before the next person moves on. I can't be hogging everything. But given that hardcore is the topic right now, I was Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing by Discharge.
Yeah.
One of the best
Absolutely.
debuts in terms of hardcore music. I listen to that all the time. Obviously self-titled. I always get that singing in the pub or whenever we bully Scobes. Shout out to Scobes. to play songs like that and Gotham City, you know, the usual.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely just say a quick side note. 100% Discharge's debut is
Oh, hey,
unbelievable as well.
speaking of Gotham City and Discharge, I was looking at the back cover of my copy of Black Ritz there, and your man, one of the lads from Gotham City, is wearing a Discharge t-shirt on it, which kind of surprised me. Sort of like
Yeah, that's
Nice.
strange.
Melodic
melodic
Uh,
heavy metal band from Sweden
Yeah,
listening
yeah.
to Discharge is pretty cool.
Well, they
Anyway,
probably
I-
played a load of
yeah.
youth club gigs with Swedish deep bands at the time.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, Puke and all that. Yeah, are they Norwegian? I think are they? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But,
But there were loads like what are they called? Fucking anti-Cymex and stuff like
they're
that.
cool. Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah. But yeah, anyway, I'll stop hogging it for now. Maybe I'll come back to a few more. But yeah, that's three quick ones from me. On
One last one about Show No
Thanks, Ed.
Mercy is, I think, well, unless you look at something like Kill 'Em All, which was released a few months before it in mid-83, I think Show No Mercy was December 83. I think that's the first metal album which is totally dominated by tremolo strumming, which is
Yeah.
a technique which is borrowed directly off GBH and Discharge. And that kind of just forms the main way that they write their riffs.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
And you can
absolutely.
a good quote is stealing the quote for that Fenrir said on the documentary about the first three albums. He said maybe it wasn't that, but anyway, Fenrir said that Shaun of Mercy was basically them playing Iron Maiden, like a black metal version of Iron Maiden, basically.
Yeah.
Is what they were doing on that record.
I felt it was
Considering-
really the one true album from them where they really like held their influences on their sleeve before they really went in their own direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
As well.
Didn't
The
have
sad thing
sleeves.
about that as well
They were still wearing
is
sleeveless spandex at the time. They did have
the
sleeves.
sad thing
well,
about that
they
record
still
as
have,
well.
like,
is
Fair
makeup
that-
and,
point,
like, photo
The
shoots
sad
with
thing about that
stupid looking
record as
knives
well
and
is that I
whatever.
think it's until they stopped touring, I think it's the only record in Slayer's repertoire where they never ever played anything live from it as well.
Oh yeah,
What?
they'll play like
play
one
Black Magic,
song
I
live.
guess.
That's
Yeah,
about
I've
it.
seen them do Black Magic live anyway.
Yeah, just Black
And I'm
Magic.
pretty sure I've seen the Antichrist as well.
They had both.
But
on the
I say
last
that
tour.
having seen them in 2001 and 2007. So that's a bit
We
different.
saw them at probably
Yeah.
the worst possible time then.
I mean, I saw that. Yeah.
I don't know, man. That
Metal
last show was kind of rough in Dublin.
Yeah,
I had
it
to-
was.
had
I
to
was
leave the show
hammered
at the
and I
point
just
because I was
stormed
sick.
down the front when I heard those intro like bass lines for Black Magic. I
Mm.
was fucking locked and just threw myself into the front. It was great fun.
Oh man, I'm raging. That was the one song I wanted to see from them live, and I was stuck in the back, bloody putting away Lamb of God's gear when it was on. It's like, feck's sake. I literally got the cats the end of like Angel of Death, and I think like Chemical
Yeah.
Warfare. That was about
So
it.
Seriously,
whole-
right for working for posers, bro.
Yeah. That whole gig, I had some drunk Polish man keep harassing me, like, "Hey, brother, are you friends, man?" And he kept like fucking trying to hug me and shit. I was like, "Bro, I'm just trying to watch Boomers."
And
play
you were
metal
only
right now."
12 then too, so that's pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
I wasn't even. I didn't even make my communion, man. At that point, yeah, that was rough. But yeah, anyway, that's me. So whoever wants to take over.
Well, as we just talked about Shown of Mercy, one of mine was Exodus Bonded by Blood.
Oh, brilliant!
Oh,
yeah.
great choice.
Again, I actually like it more than Shown of Mercy. I think it's the ultimate American thrash album. It's like the perfect fucking essence of everything that was great about the Bay Area scene. Yeah, I think anyone who grew up being big into thrash probably loved that album. The fucking lyrics are diehard, evil as fuck, killer riffs. Every song is really catchy and memorable. And if I didn't bring it up, our friend Tom Kingsnorth would kick my ass as well.
Bad mate.
Do you think that record would maybe be a little more respected if it had come out in like what was it, 83 when it was
Yeah, because it was
originally
all
planned.
written by 83 and there was just
Yeah.
like difficulties with Kirk Hammett leaving and record label stuff and whatever. So yeah, I think they'd probably be a lot bigger.
Do you know the artwork was actually a huge sticking point as well in the delay?
It looks like
"No,
Kirk
Trump is
Hammett
through.
smoking a
Trump is
cigarette.
going to blow you away." And then that shit comes out with the babies.
Yeah, the artwork is terrible.
That's part of the enjoyment, I think.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I think
it's rivaled in bad artwork only by Consuming Impulse by Pestilence.
Oh my god.
Oh,
that
God,
is
yeah.
rough.
But yeah, I think
Dark is
another
rough.
part of it is like sort of just the quality of their later stuff. Because yeah, a big part of it is that it came out late, that it should have come out in like 83 or whatever, and would have made a bigger splash then. But it's also like Exodus' stuff after that album really wasn't that impressive. Like Place of the Flesh is okay, and everything else after that is fucking unlistenable. It's shit.
Yeah.
Like
Do the Toxic Waltz.
yeah, Toxic Waltz. I don't even know the name of the album that's off, but like Jesus, what's it called?
Fabulous Disaster, I think that's
Yeah,
the name of it, like
awful
89
anyway.
or something.
What's the
Whereas
one that
sucks.
Metallica and Slayer and whatever at least had a few cool albums after their debut, whereas Exodus was just immediately downhill for
I
them.
can't
Yeah,
remember
yeah.
the
Really,
name, but
really
Exodus have
skyrocketed
an
there
album
after that.
in like 91 or 92 with the giant silver ball chasing them down the fucking motorway in a car.
Oh, yeah,
I've
that's-
never actually listened to the whole album, but I know that album cover.
It's always a good bit of trivia about Exodus and Kirk Hammett is that before he changed band, there's actually a live demo of a song called, I think it's called Die By His Hand. And there's
Yeah,
a
it's Creeping
mid-break
Death,
riff,
right?
which clearly the riff pattern and the vocal pattern, that gets borrowed and used as the breakdown. Die by my hand.
Creeping
that
Death,
bit on Creeping
Creeping
Death.
Death, yeah.
So
Yeah, I think I heard an interview say he
for-
wrote that when he was 16 or something.
For a band that was started in 1979, you can dare say there was a lot of ideas that were just brewing and just waiting to be put down in studio until that came out. And it was recorded in
Definitely, yeah.
mid-84, but got released a year later.
But that's nearly a thing in itself, though. Like the amount of bands who take forever to put out their debut, and then it's just the debut and nothing else. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know you can say about Habitat Sport as well, which was another one on my list.
Yeah.
Access to Hell is a great record, but I don't know. It was about 10 years in between the debut and the second record that only came out last year, I think, or 2 years ago at this point.
Is
So,
there a reason it takes them
I
so
think the
long to put out
record for
records?
taking so long to get the record out is a doom band from Baltimore called Iron Man. I'm pretty sure they formed in like 1980 and then didn't release the first album until like 1997 or something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess Sadistic Intent were the same. I think I might be wrong with that, but I think they had stuff way earlier. But then they just
Sadistic
didn't record
Intent, I
anything.
guess, are one of those ones that put out like an EP or a split or a single every 10
Yeah,
minutes.
in like
so aren't they?
87, like 87. I think 94 was the first album. But that album is great too. But yeah, anyway,
Unslaughter and loads of them bands are kind of like that.
definitely. Yeah. Anyway, Chris, hit us with the next one, baby.
Yeah, I guess I'm going now. I'm going with mine. So the next one I was going to talk about was I was going to throw in a debatably metal one, Amoebics, sort of on the cusp of crust punk and black metal, speed metal, thrash metal, but influential for the whole lot of them. The album's called Arise, and if you listen to it, it's got like those sort of like real snarly, like kind of Corthon-ish, like early black metal style vocals, really bleak and harsh atmosphere to it, and just like extremely heavy for 1985. Yeah, totally revolutionary album. I don't know how many of you are into it because you aren't so much punk guys. I don't think some of you.
Amoebics
it's
are
a
cool.
great
I
record.
don't really know them as much.
Um,
I know,
I'm
yeah,
not-
John.
I'm
my
not
man John
super
definitely likes
familiar
them.
with it, to be honest. I've listened to like a couple tracks here and there, but not the full album.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to it yesterday, and one of the things that hadn't occurred to me before, but it struck me when I was listening to it yesterday, was he does these sort of like real like mournful, vaguely amateurish sounding vocals on it, but like clean singing in between the harsh ones, and it really reminds me of De Mysterious Dom Stephanus and some of the other early Norwegian stuff where they sort of experimented with these weird sort of clean singing vocals that weren't like anything else you really get in heavy metal. And I reckon they may have borrowed it from the guy from Amoebics because it's the only place I've heard it outside of that stuff.
like Rob Miller and Amebix, like really kind of they really wore the influence of Killing Joke on their sleeves, and a lot of the tribal rhythms that they used in some of the drumming patterns were definitely inspired by Killing Joke. Some of the clean vocals, definitely. They had a bit of post-punk atmosphere going on in there as well, which you could say is probably influenced not just by Killing Joke, but probably by bands like Joy Division and Bauhaus. And there's definitely an indebtedness to stuff like Motorhead, obviously, Venom, less bluesy, and definitely Motorhead as well.
Yeah, it's got that post-punk vibe, but it's the like nuclear wasteland vibe just ramped up all the way to 11.
Yeah. I was actually,
I'm in the
you mentioned
minority
Venom
of
there,
Amebix
John,
fans.
and I was listening to an interview recently with Rob Miller from Amebix, where he said he makes the claim anyway, whether it's true or not, that the Venom black metal artwork is stolen from a piece of artwork that Amebix used. You've probably seen him like I think he's called like the Splatter Man or something like that. That he's using a lot of Amebix t-shirts and stuff like that.
Well, I've no idea about that. I'll have to look
if you look up just like Amebix, No Gods, No Masters or whatever, it's one of the t-shirt designs, but it's taken from some like late 19th century artist who claimed it was a vision he had of this like medieval witch that visited him or something like that. Like he was like a pagan occultist kind of guy, and
sounds like brother need to lay off the opium a little bit.
But yeah, Amebix found this piece of art and they started using it, and it is strikingly similar to the Venom logo, and supposedly Venom nicked it off them.
Well, Amebix kind of like were an exception to the rest of the crust punk community because they stopped singing excessively and in an excessively preachy manner about politics, and they became a lot more. The music looked a lot more inwardly. It seemed to be quite romantic. It seemed like they wanted to evoke the natural world and all that kind of stuff when you hear them. Around the early 80s, they moved into like a big kind of a mansion with the drummer whose parents were away. And I think that lad, I forgot what his name was. He appeared on the Amebix documentary. He developed paranoid schizophrenia, unfortunately. But I think this guy was really, really into Aleister Crowley and all this kind of thelemic magic and all sorts of occult stuff. But apparently he was the main influence on why they kind of developed this more esoteric occult leaning to what they would do starting from the early 80s and onwards until they did Arise, Monolith and everything. But they wrote a song about him on that album called Largactil, which I think is a drug which is prescribed to schizophrenics. So that's a bit of trivia about that, I think.
I never actually knew that's where the song title came from. I thought it was an odd one. That's cool.
Am I the only one that heard he formed a Paranoid Schizophrenia and thought it was a band? And like, I've never heard that band. Oh yeah, Paranoid Schizophrenia. Yeah, they had that 7-inch on Clay Records. Is that 2 from Chris or 3 from Chris?
Yeah, I think it's 2 from you.
That's 2 for me. So the last one I had was Convent Guilt, which I wouldn't say it's like in my top 3 all-time debut albums, but I think it's the best debut album from a band in the last 20 years or so. I think it's one of the best heavy metal heavy metal albums of recent decades.
That album is excellent.
It's brilliant, yeah. So for anyone who hasn't heard them, they're an Australian band who do...
I got the just a few weeks ago, actually.
Oh, nice. That's the second one, actually. That's a really good album.
Oh, sure, yeah, right. Diamond Cut Diamond, yeah.
Diamond Cut Diamond's great record as well.
Guns for Hire, the first album, I'd describe it as somewhere between sort of the more sort of demo 7-inch sort of amateurish end of new wave of British heavy metal mixed with sort of Australian hard rock like AC/DC and Rose Tattoo. And then there's even a sort of like a folk ballad almost on the song with a sort of hard rock doomy midsection. So it's a really nice variation on the album while still being totally like old school and true to old heavy metal traditional sound. I think it's just perfectly recorded, killer lyrics, just brilliant record, brilliant band.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah. I definitely know the second album more myself, but debut is great too.
Yeah.
For a country with so few bands and spread out against such a large country, Australia was banging out really, really good stuff. Over the last,
100%,
like,
yeah,
about 10,
100%.
15 years.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. You know, huge on bands like Dracula and Hellbringer and stuff as well. They had loads of savage bands recently.
Hellbringer are great.
Actually, I wasn't even thinking about the black thrash stuff, which obviously goes back to the 90s, but The Wizard, another awesome band.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the same dudes. It's in Dracula, actually. Yeah.
I think so. It makes sense, wouldn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, who wants
As
to
I
go
said
next?
as I said earlier, like, my barometer was, can I sing the chorus of every tune or can I hum the main riff of it? So with that in mind, one of the ones on my list was The Wasp self-titled.
Oh, great record, yeah, great
choice.
record.
That's one I've noted down here too.
As we've discussed before, it's the greatest black metal album of all time.
Yeah, I can't deny that now.
I mean, his name's Blackie. What else do you want?
Yeah, exactly, man.
There's fucking skulls on the album cover, man.
Bro, that's pretty. That's so evil, man.
Oh yeah, brother.
They're
Honestly,
another
yeah,
band
that record is brilliant. Yeah, honestly.
They're another band who, it was a long time coming, you know, because that record was 84. So it was already pretty deep into that Sunset Strip scene.
Yeah.
Blackie had been kicking around for a long time. He had done a band in, I think, about 79, 80 with
Yeah, and even
Arthur
earlier
Killer
than
Kane.
that. I think back
Is
to
that when he-
75, there's demos of bands that he was playing in.
It was definitely late 70s when he did something with Arthur Killer Kane from the New York Dolls, which never saw the light of day.
Oh, that was London, I think, yeah.
That's right, it was. And then London continued on with later members long after. Actually, they're in the
That's
Pride
right.
of
Yeah.
Western Civilization documentary.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, it's a little harder edge than most of the Sunset Strip stuff, you know, apart from maybe what the first two Motley and first couple of Lizzie Borden albums. They're really kind of in a league of their own from
Yeah.
the poppier shit, you know, like Cinderella and whatever. But
Well, yeah, to be fair, first Crew album is also unbelievable. Just to say that as well. That's by far a standout. Them and Wasp on the Sunset Strip team, 100%.
Yeah.
I
Crew
almost
album is
actually,
brilliant.
I also think the first Lizzie Borden album and the live album they did afterwards is almost on that par with the first Wasp as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Playing so much more underrated as well, but just talking theatricality and the amazing things they were doing with costumes and pyrotechnics and stuff like that. But the important thing is it's just tune after tune of absolute bangers all the way through.
100%, yeah.
Oh yeah, it never lets up its momentum. Like from the get go, it's really well paced and just great overall. Like.
Plus, as well, if you get later versions of it, it's one of the few occasions where a bonus track gets added in, and it doesn't really break the flow of the album. They do this awesome, like, semi-acoustic version of Painted Black.
Oh yeah.
All right, yeah, I didn't even know.
And then they also have in the same sort of style, they do a slower ballady version of Sleeping in the Fire.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Is that on the original record though? That
No, it's not.
Sleeping in the Fire is, but not the
Sleeping in the
Rolling Stones
Fire
cover.
is. This is an alternative version of it. Although a track that was obviously intended to be on the original version and wasn't was Animal Fuck Like a Beast.
Yeah.
So it's one of only two albums that come to mind where I think you're better off getting a later version to get it as it was intended, or
They also have a song called Show No Mercy on that record as well, which kind of, relates back to what we were saying.
The only other album I can think of offhand that is like that, then you're better off getting a later version to get more songs because they actually add rather than detract, is Crystal Logic, of course, because you have to have a full metal system on it.
Yeah.
Oh
Flame Metal
god,
System is unbelievable. That's
we
one of
could
my favorite
make
metal
we
records.
could literally make another podcast entirely dedicated to
Oh,
that
yeah.
album. Like,
Yeah. Man, I could talk about Manila Road all day. Like, literally, man. Like, there's that fucking band, man. Oh my god.
Imagine having an album and the worst song on it is The Riddle Master.
Yeah, seriously, that
It's still
song's
a-
fucking killer, man.
Yeah, the Riddle
Exactly,
Master's
but
great.
it's still the weakest on the record.
I'd say
Yeah.
Feeling Free Again is the weakest for me.
Actually, yeah.
Not
Yeah.
that it's a
Yeah,
bad song
I
at all,
guess.
but I'd say the Riddle Master is better than that.
Flaming Metal System on the new version, it's tied with like Necropolis's best song in my opinion.
Mm.
Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love that. Like, lightning strikes, force hammer. Man, that shit's so good. Oh, I love that song.
I really like Dreams of
Yes.
Eschaton. It's got that sort of like
That's a really good
almost
song as well.
medievally
Yeah.
folky sounding introduction and everything. And it's a sort of
Some of Mark's
heavy
best
metal
works.
epic on the level with like Kashmir by Led Zeppelin or something. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
I just think through from Crystal Logic, then you have Open the Gates, Deluge, Mystification. They have 4 in a row, absolute masterpieces there.
Oh yeah. Plus as well, there was the album before that was supposed to be released and wasn't released until what, the 90s or noughties?
Yeah, the 2002 album. I can't remember the name of it.
Something the Beast, right? Mark of the Beast.
Mark of the Beast, yeah.
Yeah,
With
that was actually a really good album.
The Jim Fitzpatrick cover they eventually used in 2002.
Yeah.
It was bootlegged by Metal Hammer Germany in like 97. That was the first time most people heard it.
Yeah. I know that they recorded it probably around the time of Mystification or the Deluge, I think.
No,
Maybe
before
earlier.
it was supposed to be in between Metal and Crystal Logic.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I was reading something about it recently. I kind of only realized that it was released in 2002. I just didn't really know that until recently, but that album is really good as well. Definitely a good comeback, because I think it was released under Mark Shelton, I think, in some places. Or maybe some of the later like 80s Middle Road stuff was, because their label...
was the record in the 90s that he wanted to release as the Circus Maximus, but they released it as Manila Road Against His Will.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
He did do some solo albums later on as Hellwell, which was his fantasy fiction writing alter ego.
I got you, yeah, okay, fair.
We've got completely off track here because this isn't debut albums.
It's not debut, but I like the first Middle Road. I really like it, but it doesn't hold a candle to the like trilogy or 4 albums from Crystal Logic to Mystification.
I told Mark when I interviewed him years ago, it's like I love that record because it's so many different strands of 70s rock going on there. It's a little bit spacey, it's a little bit glammy, all sorts of cool things going on. But
so it's very proggy. I always thought it was a bit like Rush or something. It's like, I don't know. I'm not mad into like music theory or anything. Just like the weird fucking sound to it and the times and the timing and whatever. I really like it though. It's hardly even a heavy metal album. You can't even really call it.
That's what I'd said. But it's a great album. It's not really heavy metal. But then of course you called your second album metal. But when you're living in thousands of miles from the next big city, out there in Wichita. Not that Wichita's even a big city, And what other heavy metal bands were going on in America at the time? Riot in New York, the other side of the fucking country, Of course, when you're out in isolation like that and you've only got your records for company, you're going to come out with something very individual sounding.
Yeah,
and
because even
came out
in
brilliant
1980 is very archaic sounding for the time. It doesn't sound like a 1980 heavy metal album at all.
No. Definitely not. Yeah.
All right,
but anyway,
get us back.
Yeah, get back in there.
We
can wank on. We can wank on about Manila Road for fucking hours, man. Yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Okay, another one that's different from what their later records sound like, but I have to talk about Battle Hymns by Manowar.
Great record, yeah.
Great.
It's definitely their most rock and roll record, for sure. But it does have the epic stuff as well. It's got Dark Avenger and
Battle Hymn, man. That song is unbelievable.
And Battle Hymn as well, of course, Die. But amazing lyrics as well, like I give the square some finger and he won't look again, or I give some square the finger and he won't look again.
Yeah. Battle Hymns is a great song though. Like I think the solo is really well done on that song.
It's one of their most epic moments as a band too. Like it's really fucking powerful. Like you can hear where Bathory got their later sound from just on that song. Like
100%.
Yeah, and obviously they went far more down the epic and left behind the more biker rocky kind of stuff that was going on that first album. Amazing piece of trivia as well. I'm sure you've seen the clip out of it in Kerrang, but they signed the recording contract in their own blood.
I love that.
Yeah. That is that's Manowar if I've ever seen Manowar now. Yeah.
I mean, if you could, any of the first 5 probably could be the debut album, and I would still have put it on this list because they're all just balls to the wall classics. There's not a bad song there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I don't think you could up until fucking the 90s, maybe even.
I would
You know what I
I'd probably
mean? But-
prefer if they didn't put Pleasure Slave on King of Kings, but
Yeah, that's pretty rough. But I think a majority of their output up until that point was unbelievable. It's
Yeah, I
the
think
80s
what's the
stuff
one that
was
has
so
like
good.
the 20-minute song about Achilles? That's the first
Oh,
album where they
Achilles,
lose me
yeah.
a bit.
Which is funny. A good
Achilles
story about that
Agony
song
and
actually.
Ecstasy
Bit of
Blue
trivia
Hearts
around
or
battle
whatever.
hymns
It's
is
28 minutes long.
is that there's a guest, well, spoken word appearance on I think it's Dark Avenger by Orson Welles,
Mhm.
which, I mean, for a debut American heavy metal album, that's wow. That's
Yeah,
Considering as
exactly,
well
yeah.
the
Yeah.
difficulty that Iron Maiden had in trying to source the spoken word
Prisoner
parts
stuff.
that they wanted.
Oh, the
That they
prisoner
wanted for
stuff,
Number
or
of the Beast.
Number of
The
Beast,
prisoner
yeah.
one was the easiest to get.
Oh,
They
that was from a
originally
movie,
wanted-
right? That was just a sample.
that was a sample
think-
from
Yes.
The Prisoner. That was Patrick McGowan from.
Yeah,
Right,
but
yeah,
they
yeah.
still had to get permission to use it.
Yeah.
To narrate the Number of the Beast intro, they originally wanted Vincent Price and couldn't get him, so they got this guy that used to introduce horror stories on BBC Radio back in the day. Then when it came to get permission to use the sample from The Prisoner, Martin Birch called Patrick McGowan because somehow he owned the rights to the show, and he's like, "Yes, Mr. McGowan, I'm representing a heavy metal band, Iron Maiden." And it's like, "What? Heavy metal? What's that?" "Yes, fine, go ahead, use it." Slammed down the phone. That was the verbal contract they had.
That's hilarious, man.
I think another
great.
great example of an actor appearing on a metal album. I forget which album it was by Death SS. It wasn't in Death of Steve Sylvester. I think it was either the second or third one. But Oliver Reed, the great English aristocratic drunkard, appeared on Death SS's albums, which, that's quite a good fun fact. Would have
That's
been even
amazing.
better if he appeared on a Manowar album. That would have been great.
That'd be incredible.
That would have been so good, man.
I don't think we can go forward, John, until you do your mushy peas quote.
Well, we'll see about that later, maybe, shall we?
All right, cut that bit out, Emmett.
Here,
All
well, I
right.
said to my missus, if I put my plonker on the table, I'll take it off until you bring me my mushy peas.
Oh man, that's so good.
All right,
Oh,
last
Jesus
but not
Christ.
least, Dio Holy Diver.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Unden-
yeah.
Classic.
Undeniable, man.
What can you say? I
Undeniable.
mean, it's slap bang in the middle of Dio producing 10 great albums over 10 great years, starting
Yeah.
from Rainbow up until maybe third Dio album, I think, are all classics.
Definitely, yeah.
Up until Sacred Heart.
Hmm.
But yeah, one of the things I find interesting about that is if you look at the back of Dio Records and the writing credits, and it always says melodies by Ronnie James Dio. And I think he maybe wrote songs backwards from the way that most bands do it. He probably, came up with a tune and chorus and then sent it to or sung it to Viv Campbell and said, write a riff for that. Which is weird.
Yeah,
Most bands
yeah.
probably do it the other way around. But that's part of why I think every song on that is just an absolute sing-along classic.
That's
Yeah,
true.
it's-
Yeah, the
Yeah.
songs
Track
do
on
feel
that
like
album.
they're built to go around the vocals because they've got this incredible singer to work with.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned Viv Campbell briefly there. Yeah, he's the unsung hero of those first 3 Dio records, one of the greatest fucking Irish guitarists ever, who
Oh,
pioneered
yeah,
like
undoubtedly.
the early thrash metal guitar sound too with Sweet Savage before he
Mhm.
got headhunted by Dio.
Why was it that they fell out actually? Because I saw a video there during the first lockdown. It's like Dio signing some stuff for people,
Yeah.
and someone shouts Vivian, and Dio says something really weird and over the top. It's like, oh, he should.
I remember
die
what
or
it was. He
something.
said, "Oh, I met Vivian," and he's like, "Oh, you poor bastard."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But what was the reason for that? Like, do you know what I mean? I never read into that at all. Why they fell out.
I've never looked into that actually either.
Yeah, because he's publicly slated Campbell's like Jesus loads of times. Like it's to the point now where I haven't even been looking for it, and I'm just coming across all these quotes, and it's just like Jesus Christ, like.
I'll ask some questions around the Belfast hard rock / heavy metal community. I'm sure someone there has some answers.
Oh, whoops. Yeah.
Of course, they probably prefer his work in Whitesnake or some bullshit.
Yeah, wasn't he a Def Leppard
Def
or
Leppard
something?
now.
Def
He's
Yeah,
in
Leppard,
Def
Def Leppard
Leppard,
now,
right?
so I've actually
Def
seen
Leppard.
David
Not even
Campbell
not even the
live.
good era.
But yeah.
Hysteria.
No, he's been there since the 90s, so he hasn't played on anything you even would have heard. It's such a dreadful waste.
I think
Yeah.
the last Def Leppard record I heard was Hysteria, and I wanted to fucking shoot myself. Like, I'm pretty sure. Well, shout out to Anne. Me and Anne always sing Hysteria in Bruxelles at about 3 a.m. But other than that, I haven't heard anything Def Leppard have written about after fucking. I think like On Through the Night and the EP is like the only thing I ever listened to, and like one song off High and Dry maybe. But yeah.
Get
know.
older, I think you'll probably start to appreciate Hysteria.
Hell yeah,
and
brother!
Paranoia.
Get your Coors Light out, baby. Sweet home Alabama.
It is
That's
that
also a
tier.
great
It's
debut album as well. But not that album, but Leonard Skinner's debut.
pronounced Leonard Skinner.
Leaner, yeah, pronounced. That's a great record, man. Tuesday's Gone is such a great song. Anyway, yeah,
That is a
sorry,
brilliant
just
album, actually.
that's a really good record. Not Metallica's cover of Tuesday's Gone though. That sucks.
I've never heard that. I'd say that's atrocious.
It's on Garage Days, I think, or
The one they do
EPs.
of fucking Astronomy by Blue Oyster Cult is like a crime against humanity. If you heard
Oh,
that,
God,
it's awful.
yeah.
Well,
It's
to be
surely
fair, they
not as
gave-
bad as when they toured, and each city they toured,
Oh yeah.
they would play a song specific to the national audience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they played. I think they played The Usurper by Celtic Frost, but
That was awful, man. I
Yeah.
seen
it's
that video.
absolutely atrocious. But when they played in Manchester, they actually played "I Want to Be Adored" by the Stone
Oh
Roses.
yeah.
Oh.
Just the bass
Man,
line
I
again
love
and
that
again and
band.
again.
I love
Oh,
that
man.
band, but that sounds terrible.
Oh, when they
Yeah.
played Slain, it was comedy
Oh.
gold because
Oh,
they
that was
decided
so
to do a
similar to
cover of the
SpongeBob.
Wild Rover.
Awful.
Yeah, I seen them that same tour. I seen them in Berlin because I was over in Berlin at the time, and they started playing Rammstein, some Rammstein song, right? But I don't know. I'm not really into Rammstein. I think Rammstein are pretty fucking shite, honestly. But like the entire Olympic Stadium of Berlin was singing this shite, man. I was like, me and my mate Steven, shout out to Steven, we're just kind of chilling, and like we don't know what the fuck was going on. This song is terrible, man. I don't know. If they played like Do Host or something and pretend I'm playing Guitar Hero 5 or something, that would have been cooler. But yeah, that was pretty diabolical to say the
You
least.
know, people
didn't-
went
I
mad
didn't go
for
with
it too in Dublin when they played the Wild Rover, and they also did Whiskey in the Jar, as far as I remember, and people were loving it. And
It-
especially during
honestly-
the Wild Rover, like me and the 4 or 5 people I was there were pissing ourselves laughing because it was so bad.
Terrible.
Like it was
awful.
it was awful.
Oh, it was the same. Yeah, like I remember there was like a group of proper like Metallica broski types. Only a metal gig they'd ever go in like 3 years is them and Slain. Like, but they were right beside like me and the guys who were working at that gig. And while they're all like singing along to it, they just couldn't hear themselves over me and me workmates just screaming, laughing at the thing at the top of our lungs.
Yeah, my
It
brother was
was
telling me that.
priceless.
My brother was at that gig. He said it was mad. Yeah,
It was
there's a good story about that.
god-awful.
My brother, some lad, he was with his mates, and some lad just started pissing on his leg. And then,
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
some lad
One
just
last
started
thing on the
pissing
topic
pissing
of-
on his mate's leg, and then paid him. He was like, "Do you want €20?" I was like, "What the fuck is this?" I was like, that was rough. Yeah. But anyway,
One last thing on the topic of bands playing inappropriate songs tailored to the city they're in. You know, Cynic, the tech death band from America.
yeah.
I swear to God, I didn't go to this gig, but people tell me about it all the time. In Belfast, played Over the Hills and Far Away.
Jesus
Jesus
Christ,
Christ.
Jesus.
that's bad.
In a
Say
tech
that
death
was
style.
atrocious.
I don't
Tech
know how
death
that works.
style.
I'm just imagining it with the crappy vocoder vocals, like.
Which was only the second cringiest bit of the gig because they also went. So it's like, so yeah, you've got this whole like Catholic Protestant thing here, and everyone's like, no,
lads.
stop.
Oh
Don't talk about
no!
I'm pretty sure nobody from the original lineup of Cynic is even still alive. I think one of them is.
Yeah, it didn't
Paul
have him like
Reinhardt
die
and
last
the
year.
lad's dead.
Paul Masvidal's still kicking about, and the drummer and all
Yeah,
died though.
yeah.
Sure, one of them
The
only
guy
died
played
a
on
few
like
months
Death
ago as well.
albums. Yeah,
Was-
the guy played on
Yeah.
the last two. No, not the last two. What Death albums? He played on Human, I think, and Individual Thought Patterns. No, Individual Thought Patterns was Gene Holden, I think. But yeah, that album. But yeah, actually, now that we have
Yeah,
a
it
little bit of break,
top-
I think we should mention Scream Bloody Gore's unbelievably good debut.
Funny thing
I
is,
think
one
Scream
of
Bloody Gore's really good.
the one of the ones I've chosen relates to that album actually.
I think we
Hey,
have the
I know-
same one. I was
hey, I
about
know
to
what that
say.
is. Yeah, I know that. Great record as well. We'll
Yeah.
we'll come to that soon. But
We'll get to it. We'll get to
you
it.
might as well just throw on, Scream Bloody Gore in there because Scream Bloody Gore, great record.
Oh, it's classic.
Yeah.
But I know the Death Broskis and Metal Ireland aren't gonna like me saying this, but probably like fucking one of two good albums that Death made, if
Yeah,
even
And it's
two.
the
And
first
by
two.
far the superior. Of
Yeah,
those two.
Leprosy.
Yeah.
I never really got into what's the third one?
Oh,
Spiritual Healing, I think.
Spiritual Healing.
I don't know. I think you, John, you were saying you listened to it like last year maybe, and you said that it was actually better than you thought or something. I just never could get into it. I thought that first two are good. Spiritual Healing was like, it was kind of weird and just didn't really click. And then
I don't think
Human or
spiritual.
Individual Thought Patterns was an excellent. I thought that was better than, I think Spiritual Healing is like second worst to Sound of Perseverance
We've
in my
gone
opinion.
really, really
Yeah.
off topic again.
Sound of perseverance, but anyway,
you hear me?
get back
Oh my
on
God.
topic.
Yeah, I can hear you. Here, you were talking about death there. Sorry, did I miss? Did
Like,
anyone mention Morbid Angel
Fine
yet?
going off
And
topic.
Abominations.
On my crystal
We
logic. Why
haven't,
were you
no.
talking about terrible death albums?
No, because I was talking about how the
Sorry, Chris, you had a question there.
You know, I was saying, did any you were talking about Scream Bloody Gore? Did anyone mention
no,
Abominations of Desolation
No, I assumed
while you were
great.
talking
Yeah.
about?
I assume that would be
yeah,
done.
great debut.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, that's like we already talked about Merciful Fate and Show No Mercy. I don't think we got to Angel Witch yet, but I think someone might bring
What
up
was on
Angel
my
Witch.
list now was the Angel Witch.
That
Yeah,
that was
Yeah.
one of mine. Yeah.
yeah, that,
Me and
that
Paddy
Morbid
just
Angel
have the
album,
same list now.
Abomination.
Yeah.
Some
But yeah, that
Absolute
Morbid Angel
fucking
record. So
gobshite in England
It's
once told
got-
me that there was only one good song on the Angel Witch debut.
What?
And Angel Witch debut is on
There's
the
no
best,
bad songs on
one
it.
of the
It's all
best
killer,
literally.
no
yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
filler.
think
no,
I've heard that
of
opinion
all
before.
time,
People reckon that only the song Angel Witch is any use. But yeah, I reckon that Morbid Angel record, it doesn't really sound like their later stuff. There's none of the like grindy stuff or the groovy death metal they were doing in the 90s. It's a really straight on continuation of like lead guitar driven sort of heavy metal, but like in its most extreme form, sort of from albums like the first Angel Witch, Show No Mercy, first two Merciful Fate albums. It's really similar to that stuff. It's just taking it to its most fucking demented and nasty sounding conclusion. I think it's one
Before
of the
your man
best. I'd
started
say
getting
like
pegged, so
we've
that's
already
probably why it
talked about
doesn't have-
Obsessed by Cruelty. I'd say that those two are up there as like the best extreme
Yeah.
metal albums ever.
If you want to talk about early stuff that before maybe genres were kind of formed or something, I guess you could say that Abominations was kind of a precursor to, but definitely black metal elements, especially with Browning's vocals on that album.
Yeah.
But you could talk about this is one of my lists. I was 100% with Seven Churches by Possessed as well.
Yeah.
You can
great
say
choice.
they basically them bands like Poison, the good Poison, not the bad Poison.
German Poison for
records,
clarification.
German Poison, Into the Abyss, and Protector. I think Protector a bit later, but the EP or not the EP, the demo that
That's like
Chris shared a
86,
while
that
ago.
one, yeah.
86, yeah, like that, man. That intro just along with those synths is so fucking sinister, man.
Yeah, I think
It's Seven
on.
Churches.
I'd
Every song
definitely-
that
I'd
is
definitely
fucking
say
crazy.
that a classic debut release would be Morbid Tales by Celtic Frost from
Great as well,
1994.
yeah.
Brilliant
really
choice.
good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
one.
But do we count that, or do we look to Megatherion? Because we've been talking about debut albums, and
Because a
that's
lot of stuff is
EP.
already recorded
It,
with.
it depends on where
Hellhammer.
you look at regarding Celtic Frost, because some lists will try and tell you that Morbid Tales is actually an EP. It is a full length in terms of its actual length.
It
Yeah,
actually
It's
is.
still, it's like 25 minutes.
I don't
pretty
think
sure.
it's that. No, it's pretty long, man.
It's pretty.
It's over 30 minutes at least.
Yeah, it's a full length. Yeah, I would say it's a full length.
I've always considered it an EP, but
Yeah, I guess.
20
but like, if you
25
want to think
minutes
about
is according
EP,
to my eyes.
Emperor's Return would be more the EP,
every
I'd
time
say.
you go out to purchase that album as well, if you make a purchase of that, then I remember when I used to order stuff in the mail, if you got that as a CD, you were ordering that at album price, not at EP price.
Yeah,
but it was usually. I think the
I've
CD
got 3
versions are
copies of that
usually
record at this
coupled
point.
with what's it called? Emperor's Return too, right?
Yeah, Emperor's
That,
Return. I'd say that's an EP.
that was actually a very recent thing. The last LP released it.
Yeah.
No, I think they did. Not with Morbid
Alright.
Tales though. They did it with To Mega
The-
Therion.
Yeah, what the LP did. Yeah, what the hell did they
Alright.
throw in for more Tales again? Actually, don't matter. We're getting off topic again.
Talk
No,
about
no,
whatever
this is
fucking the
important
LP
because-
on the latest reissue gives you, but yeah. I
All
can't
right,
remember
no,
what album
yeah,
was
Morbid
it?
Tales, First
Morbid
Press,
Tales,
24 minutes, 51 seconds long, 6 tracks. I think that's EP.
Okay, Mr. Google, right? Yeah.
Well,
I definitely
I-
prefer To Mega Therion, to be honest, because I think
it's my favorite because it's the first I heard.
Necromantical Screams is a fucking insanely good song.
It's
You could definitely
brilliant,
tell
yeah.
they like their Sisters of Mercy and the stuff on that song.
Yes, that's I've got a little list of non-metal albums, and I've got Sisters of Mercy written down there. As
Yeah,
an
yeah,
important one
great
with early
record.
black metal as well.
I was actually thinking there, linking into earlier what John said about Scream Bloody Gore was one of my choices was actually Severed Survival by Autopsy.
Yeah.
I didn't
Great
even
record.
think of that actually. That's a great fucking choice.
Because obviously Scream Bloody Gore had the same drummer. But what I always thought of that album really being was a kind of what if scenario. What if Death went in the kind of filthier kind of production kind of direction as opposed to the direction that
decided
Chuck
to-
Schuldiner took?
Yeah, doing more speed and stuff. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think part of the reason for that is the Camley influence. Do you know on the early Death demos and stuff like that, Camley thought that they were doing a horror punk band.
oh god,
Nice.
a bit off there, yeah.
Well, I think that the original Autopsy lineup had like half of Terrorizer, I think, were playing on that. I know maybe the guitarist was in Terrorizer.
Yeah,
Because
to be
I was
fair,
playing,
Terrorizer's
Mental
lineup
Funeral.
was all over the shop. Oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
so
to be fair, but if you think about it, like my brother always says this, Terrorizer record World Downfall is kind of like a super group of grind bands to be. If you think about
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
actually
Why-
going to
why
make
did
an
they
argument
make
that
two of them went to
Terrorizer
Angel?
World Downfall's an essential album, and
it,
I know that.
that's
is.
a great one. We should put
I know
down,
that
World
some
Downfall.
people might say grindcore isn't fully metal. You can have a more punkier edge to grindcore. You can have a more metallic edge to grindcore. But what's essential about 1989's World Downfall is you basically got what becomes Morbid Angel's rhythm section. You have David Vincent playing bass on that.
basically,
You have, Pete Sandoval on drums, and that's a crucial turning point in the history of underground metal because, of course, Morbid Angel had done Abominations of Desolation, recorded it in 1986. They had shelved it; it was unreleased. They released it after Altars of Madness came out in 1989, and I think they released Abominations in 91, so just before Blessed Are the Sick. And there's a profound stylistic difference, and you can tell how much underground metal's developed within, let's just say, 3 years.
Yeah.
If you compare World Downfall and Altars of Madness, there's all of this blasting, frenetic speed, the idea of blast beats and very, very intense technical percussions being fully incorporated. It's become
Yeah.
fully foundational within death metal by that point, and that's something that was only being, flirted with to an extent, but around the mid 80s, and that became more and more and more developed and more integrated. And without a record like World Downfall, I doubt. I think it might have been released after Altars of Madness, but it seems pretty coincidental that Altars of Madness ended out the way it was as a result of them using two members of Terrorizer and incorporating them into the lineup.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that Altars of Madness, they were listening to a bunch of like early grindcore and Napalm Death and that sort of stuff, because it's so radically different to Abomination. So I don't actually like it nearly as much. I don't think it's as good, but you can definitely hear the influence of all that. Like,
Yeah,
well,
bands like
the
Napalm
major
Death
influence
and
on all
Vault
of
Thrower or
that,
whatever.
if you're going back to the whole, it was discussed earlier, of crossover thrash, then band that's not mentioned earlier was Cryptic Slaughter, who the first two albums, Convicted and Money Talks, so the main kind of staple and motif that dominates Cryptic Slaughter's early material is they seem to be the main band who made the blast beat a foundational template for literally all of their music that became a model for a lot of, you know, grindcore and then death metal and then some black metal onwards.
Yeah, I think relating to this topic, when you're talking about early grind maybe, or kind of very important albums to come out, you can't overlook Repulsion's debut, in my opinion.
Oh, Jesus,
I think Repulsion's debut is one of the greatest albums in that genre. Like it's, was 86, 87 that came out, I think.
87.
That is 87. That is so pummeling, man, that record. Like
Everyone
that and
ripped
Scum
off
by
their
Napalm
guitar tone.
Death. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's members of Napalm Death that said that Repulsion record was the real starting point for grindcore because everyone just heard that guitar tone and said, yes, this is what we're doing from now on.
Yeah. That guitar tone is really good, man.
Yeah. Anyway, going back to Severed Survival.
Anyway, yeah, sorry to destroy your thing there, yeah.
You're all good. No, like what to me really stands out about that album though is like obviously the filthy production before everything went digital, so it kind of has an organic sound to it still while sounding absolutely disgusting. What really makes that album stand out above a lot of their contemporaries at the time is the doomy elements that really seep into like the deeper tracks in the album.
Yeah, that's what I love about that record.
Yeah,
they
really there's a lot of similarities minus blues to Black Sabbath in Autopsy's first two albums. And as well as that, they sound very warm and boxy and organic. And Chris Reifert, who's the leader of the band, like I remember he mentioned in an interview, I forget what magazine I was reading out of it a few years ago, but he said that his literal inspiration for drumming was Keith Moon. He said his idea was just to literally bash the shit out of the drums, and he's not playing super fast, he's not playing anything super technical, but you can really tell that he's hammering the hell out of his kit, and
it shows.
He just comes across as really demented.
I have a funny story actually about Autopsy and an Organic Sound. This was the very first band interview I did. Going back here to about 2006, I interviewed the death metal band Overoff.
Cool.
And just a random throwaway story that came up in that conversation. One of the lads, a friend told him, "Oh yeah, man, I got that Autopsy album you told me about. It's like really sick and processed sounding." He's like, "That doesn't sound like Autopsy at all." So I go around to the lad's house. The guy puts it on the turntable. He's playing it at 45.
Nice.
Fucking hell.
What you want to do is play that Repulsion record on 45, man. You look like you fucking did a bunch of coke or something.
That's just speed the record.
Yeah, basically.
A Dublin man today murdered his entire family after playing.
Yeah, that's like Luke goes fucking caveman mode. Ooga, ooga, ooga. Starts like fucking smashing people's heads into Repulsion at 45.
Well, actually, talking about a real grog and unga bunga album, then one that I think is definitely worth discussing. It's from 1987, Canadian band. It's Strappado by Slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
There's always these like kind of debates. What was the first death metal album? And people will, some people like look for proper examples. Some will always try to say it was Scream Bloody Gore. Some will try to say it was Obsessed by Cruelty. Some will try to say it was Seven Churches. There's something significant about Strappado though, is that the songs are quite anthemic, but they're very, very primitive at the same time. It has all of the vileness that you'd associate with Hellhammer's demos, but there's something quite special on that record, and it's the guitar tone. The guitar tone is very, very upfront. It's got a very chainsaw, buzzsaw-y sound to it. And to me, the sound on that actual record, to me, is very influential. I've not heard a lot of people talk about, but
Yeah, this is every Sunlight Studios band.
If you listen to like an Ever-Flowing Stream by Dismember or
Great
Left Hand Path by
yeah.
Entombed, that to me is the prototype for how a lot of those bands wanted their guitars to sound. And it is a good record as well.
Yeah.
Really solid.
Great record, yeah,
I
great
consider it's probably my favorite death metal album ever. Actually, is that one? Just like it's got like for a lot of the reasons he's mentioned, for liking Severed Survival as well, the sort of like really doomy, nasty, like heavy rock kind of passages, along with like the fucking blasting speed stuff that they've got going on. I think it's a brilliant record.
Does anyone have the 2-tape box set in inverted commas of Slaughter demos?
No, I've heard them though.
Yeah, it was label in Southeast Asia, I'm pretty sure, put this out, so it was quite difficult to get it. But I finally got this thing, and it's like this. It's not even a box set; it's a slip case with 2 tapes, made out of paper. And they've made it like a millimeter too small, so there's no way you can get the tapes out without ruining the slipcase.
Those are great demos though, because those demos, they've got like even less of the traditionally death metal vocals, and it's all like very sort of punk sounding. It's like your man doing these like slimy sounding like screams and shouts. It's great.
Death metal album hasn't been mentioned yet, and it's one of my first ones that I got into. In terms of death metal, Slowly We Rot has to be mentioned, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
one of the greatest death metal albums.
To be honest, Obituary is a great example of a band really dive bombing after their first album. Cause of Death.
I'd say Cause of Death is really good too.
Cause of Death's good.
Cause of Death's solid.
There's not much else after that, I don't think.
But yeah, it's just Jason Murphy wanking on that second album, to be honest. But not like I love Jason Murphy. Obviously, he has his band. It's not Devastation. What's his band he did? That solo album that everyone loves. Is it Devastation? Is Jason Murphy?
No idea.
I think John might know. But anyway, he has a band. Maybe it wasn't. What's that album called? I can see the cover in my head right now. But anyway, yeah. But it's just kind of him like wanking on guitar basically the whole time. But
Disincarnate, you're thinking of?
Disincarnate, yeah. Dreams of a Carrion Kind, I think the name of the album is.
That's it, yeah. I didn't get it off straight away because it's James Murphy, not James.
James Murphy. Whoops, yeah. James Murphy. Yeah, but yeah, he definitely kind of hogs the album a bit. I guess because he's a session guitarist, he kind of just does whatever he wants. But yeah, as I think Maddie was saying, Slowly Rot, great record. Some of those songs are so fucking anthemic, man. Like the title track. Playing that, seeing them play it with my brother at when they played with Slayer last time on the tour, that was crazy, man.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I actually had to leave the Slayer show early because I was really, really fucking sick. I had really bad gastroenteritis, but I still went down with that illness because when else am I going to get to see Obituary doing an arena show?
Yeah, exactly. That was crazy, man.
I only got into the 3 Arena for the last like 10 minutes of the show, but I did at least get to see them doing "Slowly We Rot," the song. So
I got to see I got to see them play that stage side, and definitely the highlight of doing all that shit. Of like,
I haven't seen the video of them playing. What's the venue they would have played in Dublin in the early 90s?
McGonagall's,
yeah. Video on YouTube of them playing McGonagall's in the early 90s. Never seen more stage diving than that little one video.
Yeah, there's some class stories about that. I have a book, I think I told you about, I got for Christmas, where it's like different members of the Irish like music community, whatever, talking about their favorite gigs and stuff. And there's one where McGonagall's, where these lads would talk about putting on the Bull Thrower gig. And they were talking about how like they basically just had them sleeping in their nan's gaff, and
Nice.
they were like getting hammered, and like their nanny was like, "Oh, would you like some sandwiches, lads?" And it's like all these like hammered Brits over like fucking just probably like doing all the speed and shit, whatever they were doing.
John,
Probably the
John,
same
you
tour.
mean sorry, it's like a John, you mean the same ball thrower gig that every cokehead in the foggy
Man,
G
the
goes
amount
on
of
to us
fucking
about?
cokeheads that was about that fucking game, man, like that is unbelievable.
Probably
What
the same
is it
tour
with
that
like
Belfast they
junkies and
played.
like grime
They played the
politics? I always
canteen
have
at the Scottish
junkies in
Union.
Dublin ask me about seeing Napalm Death. I'm like, oh, Jesus, Napalm Death.
Airplane,
I heard they
mad.
went up to Big Smoke to see Napalm Death in 1975.
It's like that story that one of you said that like, oh, I seen Venom in Dublin. It's like, Venom, I haven't even played Dublin.
Yeah, that was some woman that was in a pub. So it's just like some suburban south side pub that me and an ex were in. And this woman just came up and would not stop shouting on at us. It's like, Jesus, Venom, I seen them in Dublin in 1983. And I looked it up, and Venom have never played in Dublin.
Yeah. But anyway, Paddy, hit us with the next one, bro. Sorry for interrupting you over and over again.
Yeah, there was Canadian bands loosely mentioned, which recently,
Yeah.
which actually ties into my next one. I'm cheating a little bit here because I'm actually going with an EP, but it's actually because this band's release schedule early on was a mess because their first album isn't technically being officially released until this year. Even though they have had a very like memorable discography outside of it, but it's Razor.
Yeah, great record.
Armed and Dangerous, their first EP, fucking brilliant release. What stands out above it compared to their later material is that there's a lot more Nawabum influence, mainly because they hadn't fully developed their sound. Although at the same time, there's songs on that EP that are the elements are already there. It's more just a case of them later going fully in that direction later on. Standout track for that in particular is Take This Torch. You already hear the heavy speed metal, trashy kind of stuff that they become famous for, and like Violent Restitution, Shotgun Justice and stuff, and Evil Invaders, of course, later on.
Oh, sure, that song is on Executioner's Song. I think that song is on that
Executioner's Song is the one I was alluding to. Actually,
the one that's they haven't released it, or basically
it got leaked obviously years ago as a bootleg, but it isn't until this year it's actually becoming an official release.
Yeah,
so wait, was Executioner's Song that was never released back in the day?
It was a demo.
I never knew that. I was assuming
fully
that was
recorded
like
though. That was
album.
the thing.
Yeah, I was assuming that was an album that got put out and everything.
It fell through because the band had a falling out with the original record label. I was supposed to put it out, and then they ended up having to swap labels. If I'm not mistaken, that original record label actually went out of business, and that's why it was so difficult to get officially released.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
First, I was about to ask you. I was getting really excited there. Like, wait, is there a whole early Razor album I've never heard?
I wish there was, man.
Yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, I didn't actually. I haven't listened to Armed and Dangerous in a long time, but I knew you were going to talk about Razor, so I was listening to Executioner's Song and Evil Invaders, and those are brilliant records.
Oh,
they've still got
absolutely
like very heavy metal, hard rock, fucking new wave British heavy metal sounding, but going into like thrash and whatever too, but like similar enough to Show No Mercy and whatever as well, I guess. But yeah, they've got like a real nasty sort of like street sound to them.
Definitely fantastic Canadian debut. It's probably a bit more low key than some others. Would be None Shall Defy by Infernal Majesty.
Yeah,
great record as well. Yeah. And I guess in newer stuff, a band that was basically around for 40 years. Not 40 years is a bit of an exaggeration. Maybe like 30 years or so. The guitarist played on Fallen Angel of Doom. Witch's Hammer's debut came out last year or 2 years ago now. Great record as well. Has one of the best covers I've ever seen of the speed metal wheel colliding into Earth. I think that's probably one of my favorite album covers. That's a really good album. If I know Pearson reviewed it, that's a really, really good record.
It is, as is all their 80s stuff, like the demos and the EP and stuff from back in the day. It's really good shit.
Yeah, it's a shame that Nuclear War now put it out because it's like 50 quid to get it shipped over.
Well, yeah, and it's also a shame because I overlooked it completely. Because whenever I hear about something on nuclear war now, I'm just expecting more sort of like bullshit blasphemy proclamation type war metal clones.
Yeah,
and
to
it
be
took
fair,
me
they've
like,
actually
it
done
was
some
like,
really good stuff recently.
oh, they've done some
like
good
they're
releases,
Yeah,
but anytime I see a band, if I see a band called Witch's Hammer on fucking Nuclear War Now Records, I immediately look past
Yeah.
it. So it was about a year and a half before I heard that record because
Sure, like-
Pearson reviewed it.
yeah,
What
like-
do you mean you don't buy all
like Evil is
600
on Nuclear War now and stuff.
variations of the Die Hard edition?
I
Well,
gotta
sure, they're
admit,
reissuing Phobia's stuff, which was pre-enslaved as well. So
Oh yeah, I heard
for the
about
first
it.
time, it should be good. And obviously, they did
Nice.
stuff with Beherit and stuff,
In
which is
fairness,
obviously
I think they
gold
actually
medal
have some
shape, but,
varied
I mean-
catalogs around. I mean, they did. They released stuff by Armor and his side projects.
yeah.
So they've done plenty of good heavy metal stuff as well as the usual, Black and Death stuff. Which
It
ones
is
are
true.
really-
I suppose it's just the absolute quantity of the Black and Death stuff. Like
Yeah,
they've
he
done all
just
this other great
fucking
stuff, but they've got 666 fucking terrible
Blasphemy
war
to
metal
Christ around
bands
that band.
for
Yeah.
every cool heavy metal band.
Yeah.
Well, one of the best festival lineups I ever went to was
Nuclear War Now Fest.
Fest in Berlin. It was
Yeah.
unreal.
But anyway, I can't remember where we were. I think someone was talking about Slaughter.
No, we were past that, weren't we? Where did we get to?
Razor.
Oh,
we
Razor.
were,
sorry,
we
I
were
forgot
on
about
Razor
it,
originally.
yeah. Razor, yeah,
Witch's
yeah,
Hammer.
go on. Witch's Hammer. we were
Witch's
talking
Hammer.
about, yeah.
Pretty much all I had to add to it outside of what I said before was just, the one extra thing I want to add though, I suppose, is like, even though probably their later releases would have been more renowned and more like well loved by people, like fans, I think as a statement of intent for the band overall, that
Mhm.
first EP is a perfect kind of message.
When
You'd
you're
have to agree, yeah,
calling
100%.
songs like hot metal and fast and loud,
Mm,
you know what it is straight away.
exactly. They're not even
I have
subtle
to give
about it.
this a
That's what
listen
you want.
once we finish up because it's so long since I've listened to this.
Also, such an iconic artwork as well. Just the monochrome of the guy playing a guitar with a fucking
Yeah.
razor blade.
Still one of my favorite shirts I own. Like, just that album
Yeah.
art's unreal.
Every time I hear that album, I just think back of like a few years ago when I was living with Jack in Limerick. Oisin practically lived on our couch there for about 6 months. And every time that we'd play anything from that album, man, there would be Oisin sitting up, fingers over his nose, to trying to make it as nasally as possible. Just be like, just really over the top, holding his nostrils together,
Brilliant.
screaming like.
Yeah, that's usually the go-to for Manila Road when you're singing along to any of their stuff.
Yeah.
I can't remember where it was. I saw them one of the times. Probably, I think it was that time in Belgium. But with Manila Road, they swapped around. Like, so Noity got up from the kit and took Mark's guitar, went up to the mic, and then he pinched his nose and started going, "Last in the crap, alas."
That was great, yeah.
Oh, that's great. One album I do have to mention that hasn't been mentioned yet after that was Death Penalty by Witchfinder General, actually.
That's a great
Ooh,
record.
Yeah,
I had that,
yeah,
yeah.
that fucking
Fucking
album.
brilliant. Yeah, I
That's
had
so
that on the list
good.
myself. Had on the list myself. Yeah, great
Still
record.
still on like my top 5 doom metal albums of all time.
Yeah,
Like, it's
brilliant.
absolutely brilliant. Like, every single track on it is fantastic. And it does one of the few, they're like one of the few bands ever that took the Black Sabbath influence, wore it on their sleeve, but didn't sound like they were just trying to regurgitate it. They actually did something unique in their own vein with that kind of sound.
Yeah, because
if you're out there and you
it's
play
quite
rock
fast
band,
and heavy.
talking about you.
Even for, I mean, songs like R.I.P. and fucking Free Country on that album are really sort of speed metalish.
Absolutely.
It's almost like a Symptom of the Universe by Sabbath. They're much more influenced by that sort of stuff than the more bluesy end of Sabbath.
Is
Yeah,
Free Country on
absolutely.
that one? I get mixed up.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Free Country.
Free
first
Country
one.
is, yeah. Yeah, that album's just it's definitely up there.
The witch find the general.
Just I didn't choose this one originally, and I feel like an idiot for not doing it in hindsight. But Epicus Doomicus Metallicus by Candlemass
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
brilliant.
that's like one of the best ones ever made, hands down, when it comes to doom
Ah.
metal.
That's a
Yeah,
really
100%,
important
man.
album too, because when you hear all those
Mm.
bands like fucking Solstice and Atlantean Codex and Procession and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff, all that stuff
absolutely.
is kind of like that epic doom, epic heavy metal kind of stuff. It's all really
Yeah, even though like you could go like, even though that stuff is more 2000s, I guess, in comparison to Candlemas, but you can even go to the 90s with bands like Solitude Eternus and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With
yeah, absolutely.
clear Candlemas influence, even though that was not the cool thing to play at the time.
Yeah.
And
It was the most seriously uncool thing to play at the time. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
Rich Walker telling me about the shit he got in the 90s just for saying in interviews. I was like, yeah, we're influenced by Manowar and Candlemas.
but yeah, definitely find a general class
that
record.
was another band
Oh,
I
yeah.
wrote down actually was Solstice, because that first album is brilliant. And yeah, we've now talked about Candlemas and Manowar's first albums, but yeah, it's sort of taking those two, the sort of epic heavy metal, epic doom kind of stuff, and mixing it in with like there's a lot of that like English like death doom stuff that was going a lot on in there at the same time. Like I'm not mad into that stuff, but I can definitely hear lots of
I
sort of
didn't even
fucking riffs and
consider
whatever. They're
any.
very similar to like Mourning
Yeah.
Beloved or bands like that.
I didn't even consider any non-80s albums when I was doing my short list, but first Codex album would have to be on my favorite debuts as well. I mean, I love all three of them, but when I first saw them live, that was the only one that was out. And I know they did the Narcotic demos before that. So they had other material beforehand, but it's still up there with my favorite debuts of this century anyway.
It's a great album. For me, Codex have gotten better with every album so far, though. I like them. They're sort of ordered. They've come out in order of preference for me. I think the new one's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm just addicted to White Goddess, man. That album is so fucking good. Like, unbelievably underrated.
Well, now it got me thinking here about non-80s albums. First Destroyer 666 has to be another one for me.
Yeah. You could say
Oh,
First
yeah.
Destroyer, great record.
I
if
have
you wanna go more
Vomitor's
90s
Bleeding the
stuff.
Priest on mine. I knew that was one thing I wanted to mention. I was trying to pick out of those Australian bands. Like, am I going to go First Gospel, First Destroyer, or First Vomitor? And Bleeding the Priest by a mile.
That's
yeah,
a
I
really
love that
hard
record
decision.
so
Yeah,
much,
it's a really hard one.
I know I'm wearing
I'd say
my
Bleeding the Priest is
Vomitor
the best
t-shirt here, but the Gospel one holds a special place in my heart as well because the first band in that scene I got into. I remember I was young Gasson. This was 2007, 2000. It was just before my 18th birthday in 2008, and I went to what was supposed to be Gospel's last ever Irish gig in the Bun Factory of all places. It got upgraded to somehow, and I thought, wow, it's amazing. I'll never see this band again. I've seen them twice in Ireland since.
Yeah, I never got to see them. I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
eventually.
I'm raising the one chance I was gonna have last 2019 now. Fuck.
Disgusting, man.
That fell through, unfortunately. It was a shame. That would have been killer.
Yeah, it would have been good. Yeah. It's a shame it went, that gig was a great gig. It's a shame
Oh, it
that
was
the schedule
amazing.
didn't work out well. But yeah, there's some fucking terrible bands on Siege that they could have moved so Gospel could play.
Oh
But,
god, yeah. Get rid of half the core shite.
Man, yeah, there was like 2 good bands or 3.
Sorry, Tall John.
Yeah,
Did we
Jesus, that
mention,
lad doesn't like me that much as it is.
That's because of me stirring the shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Did we mention the Sabbath debut actually yet? Because you got me thinking about that church gig, and I just remember Negative Plane finishing off with.
Yeah, that was a
great,
really nice way to finish that gig. I was actually only saying
Stained
that to
Glass
someone the other
Revelations
day.
is a really good record.
It was. I'm actually annoyed that I didn't see much of that set because that was the point where the Graveyard Madness just took over.
Oh yeah, that's real graveyard stuff.
I remember missing
like-
fucking Malthusian set, and the reason for it was so fucking silly. Like that summer before that gig happened, I'd seen Malthusian about 4 or 5 times, and I remember I was chatting with Dave, and we were just outside, and Dave went in to see him and everything. And it was like the one and only time I've gotten a chat with Rob from Vomitor. Like, we were just chatting away, just smoking a fag and whatever. And I can't remember who it was, but one of the Limerick lads passed me, and he was like, "Here, man, you coming in to see Malthusian?" And I literally just jinxed it like straight away. I was like, ah, sure, look, I can see him loads of times again next year. Like, and literally 3 months later, the fucking pandemic started. Then, like, do you know what I mean?
I mentioned
yeah,
earlier that happened with me once. They were supporting cattle decapitation in Antianis in Belfast, RIP. And we thought, me and a mate were like, somebody who's no Krusty John. We're like, oh, fuck, man, we've seen them loads of times. Do you want to just go over for a pint and spoons? Yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
And then didn't see them again for like 6 or 7 years afterwards.
Well, I did the same thing with fucking Zom, who were my favorite Irish band as a teenager. I still think they're brilliant. Like, the demo is one of the best things that ever came out of this country. But I was at the last 2 shows they ever played in London and in Denmark, and both times I was like, sure, see them anytime they play, supported everything. Those last 2 gigs they ever played, and I didn't fucking go and watch them. I was sitting in the pub across the road on both occasions.
Yeah, that's true. That's what we were doing during Malthusian set. We were sitting in the pub across. Yeah,
That was
just
a
like
cracking wee pub, actually. Is it?
that was a great pub. That's the first time I proper met
The
you, I think.
Roundstone? Or no, that's the one in Dublin.
It was the Square or something. I think the name
Square,
of that pub was. Yeah. They had all the 1916 memorial stuff on the wall. That was good. But yeah. Anyway, cracking weekend to say the least.
Malthusian and Overoff became just such big staples of being support acts at a certain point that it just felt so much that you'd take watching them for granted that you wouldn't really care about if you missed them or not.
Zella
Yeah,
Cult were
really-
in that boat for a while as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only band I never got to that point with, and it's the band I've seen most times, I think it's over 20 now, is Rob a Bitch of the North.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think I must have
Same.
seen them near 20 times at this point.
But they're consistently great. Like, do you know what I mean? That's the thing.
But
like,
they
you know what I mean?
never disappoint. That's
That's
the great
it,
thing
like,
about them.
Especially live. Like, I didn't like the album as much as I liked the demo, but live they're always killer.
Do you know, that's a big issue with that album when they brought it out. And I don't know, was it Jack or was it Caleb I was talking about that with? Like, mate, it was well over a year ago now. But I really think, as much as I like that album, I really think the production wise, I don't think they captured their live sound at all on that.
Yeah.
The energy
Yeah,
isn't there at all. Like, because that's when they play live, it's consistent. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, the energy's
it sounds
there.
quite clinical and whatever, doesn't it? Like, it doesn't have like the when they're playing live and on that Defending Two Castles demo, it's got that kind of like Raven style, like old school speed metal sound, and it doesn't really feel like that when you listen to the album, unfortunately. So I hope they kind of do. I hope they get someone to record it next time.
One thing I will add about that album though is that it sounds significantly better on an LP than it actually does in streaming platforms and stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%.
The difference is night and day. Actually, it still doesn't fully capture that live sound, though. I will agree.
Well, we to wait and see. I know they have the second one coming out in May, so I'm hoping now. Like, I know the lads self-produce their albums. I'm hoping that they got like a fucking fourth pair of ears in there. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it did take them forever and a day to put out the first LP, and they're bringing out the second one quite quickly after. So that's
they do have a fourth. Well, in terms of fourth pair of ears in there, I think James from Distortion Project in Belfast is still managing them.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he would have that, that role in the creative process. I would hope so anyway. I mean, man knows his shit. He's put on more bands in this country than probably anyone apart. Probably more than Hitch, actually, considering the number
definitely.
Of,
he's been gone way longer.
Plus, as well, the glory period of Rock KD dailies when it was 3 bands every Saturday.
Man, yeah,
I'd just
that's
send
the
Tom
thing.
Kingsnorth up to Belfast to record it for them. He'd get what we want out of them.
Yeah. Oh, mate, get this fucking going, yeah.
Yeah, no, mate, fucking do it again, eh? Doesn't sound like
it doesn't
fucking
sound like
tank.
fucking ecstasy. Fucking no bay trashing off my fucking hell. Shout out to the Aussie boys, by the way.
Mate.
Did you still have another one left?
Well, I have
a
few, but I need to get John.
The thing was, the other ones I had have already been mentioned. So,
yeah. John, hit us with some there, bye.
What do you think?
Oh my god, John's still to go. We'll be here all night.
And Emmett as well.
Well, the trouble about that was that I already mentioned several that I had on my list already. But whilst you were all mentioning other ones, I conjured up some new ones.
Right, and look at that. The power of the autism, man.
Fairness, I have 2 very, very obvious ones that no one's mentioned yet as well. But
I'm thinking the
I'm
same
gonna go
thing.
ahead
I
with
think we have the
one.
exact
It's
same
another
two
one.
on mind.
There's
gonna say,
another one
back-
that I'm going to go through with from 1987. It's from Brazil, and
Oh, ready to fuck.
this certainly wasn't. These weren't the first band from Brazil to play underground metal, but they probably had the most significant effect in the 1980s. That's Sarcophago
Yeah,
and it's the album INRI.
Great record.
And you had Morbid Visions by Sepultura released the year before, but Sarcophago really went, let's say, above and beyond when it came just to sounding really, really harsh and aggressive. And the riffs on that record are like, they can be slow and fast at the same time. When they're playing slow, they have a lot of sort of like hooks and hammer-ons, which you'd expect from like songs like Triumph for Death by Hellhammer. And then when it goes into the speedier sections, you have these quite melodic riffs that are quite hardcore inspired, but they also sound a bit like first album Bathory. And over the top of that, you have this really harsh blasting percussion, which is kind of similar to Obsessed by Cruelty at twice the speed. And yeah, it's basically, it sets the template for a lot of what becomes black metal later. And then what becomes the more, I don't know, war metal variant of black metal as well definitely grows from that.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely hear from listening to INRI that bands like Beherit and Blasphemy took a huge amount of influence from that record. And that particular record, and the whole Brazilian scene was very, very incestuous in many respects. They all kind of sounded that they had a unified kind of aesthetic to the way they came along with things. That one really just stands out, and it really is a model for how more extreme music will become after that album. So I think Sarcophago's first album is really worth mentioning.
I think a good connection to that album in terms of Brazilian scene and stuff that coming out the same year was Mutilator's debut, Immortal Force.
Immortal Force.
Yeah.
Really good album. Like, it's same kind of vein, more speedy, like thrashy influence. But that guitar tone is like, definitely can see some Swedish death metal influence from that guitar.
Abominable Anno Domini by Chacal was 87 as well, I think.
Yep.
And who was the fourth band on?
It was not Mystifier, that would have been later. But
no,
Volcano.
Oh, Volcano or
Bloody Vengeance.
Volcano, Bloody Vengeance. Yeah.
And
that's probably my
Vengeance.
favorite Brazilian album. Actually, I think Bloody Vengeance is a classic.
Nah, Chris,
actually,
Roots is clearly
Volcano
yours.
Volcano did a live album before they did Bloody Vengeance as well.
Yeah.
That's much more. It's kind of like proto black metal, but it's very, very indebted to a lot more melodic, like stuff like Venom. And it's a really, really good live album. And it includes like a lot of stuff which you would never surface on any of their like studio LPs. So that's a good one.
The other one I was thinking of, 87, Brazil, Holocausto Campo de Exterminio.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Exterminio.
Careful
but you go
there,
back
the
1 year
Facebook won't
before,
be
they
liking
made
that.
86. The same label put out a split of Chacal, Mutilator, Sarcophago, and Holocausto. Imagine having all those great bands in, I think, pretty much the same city at the time, you know?
Yeah, true. Jesus, Brazil really has a stacked line. If you could go on about 3 fucking years about that country, especially, obviously Sarcophago, I think, peaked during INRA. What's the second record? Not Laws of Scourge, I think it is. Rotting, yeah. Laws of Scourge is on that album, I think. But I think it's more like, Oh, Rotting's the EP, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But I definitely think INRI is definitely peak in terms of Brazilian thrash or Brazilian like proto black metal maybe. Them and Sepultura are at the top, along with Volcano.
Another unique thing about INRI is that they took all of the attitude of Brazil had a very, very strong punk and hardcore scene. Bands like Ratos de Parau and Dorsal Atlantica, which preceded bands like Sepultura and Sarcophago. But what Sarcophago did on that record was they took all the violence and aggression and spitefulness of punk music, but rather than just doing it as some form of like antagonistic protest, they just converted it into the language of anti-clericalism, blasphemy, and kind of they just made it into something like unsanctimonious that kind of fitted into underground metal's language, and they made it something that fitted it perfectly and took it up a notch.
Yeah,
Have to-
I 100% agree.
I have to say, if there's one song though from a different sarcophago release that I could put on INRI that would totally improve it, "Sex, Drinks, and Metal" from Roddy.
Great song.
Perfect
great song.
suggestion, isn't it?
Yeah, it really
Sex,
is. That's
drinks,
I
and
always listen to that when it's my birthday. I don't know why. I just think it suits the day.
What do you mean you never get your hole on your birthday?
Oh Jesus, yeah. To be fair, the last year has been pretty rough. But yeah. Anyway, is that
There's
all? Well, I
one-
think Pearson has a few more anyway.
Another one that I'm definitely going to mention, and because Exodus Bonded by Blood was mentioned before, and the whole backstory to an album like that is, God, it's going to take them years to do this. When's the first album going to come out? It's actually Mayhem, De Mysterious Dom Sathanas.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I've got that one
Which
too.
you're talking about 10 years in the making. So they preceded that by doing Pure Fucking Armageddon, Death Crush, and
Live in
obviously on
Leipzig
those
as well.
recordings, they're very, very indebted to Bathory, Hellhammer, Celtic Frost, Sodom, Venom.
They also
all
did, was it Live in Leipzig?
type
Was
bands.
Live
before
in
that as well?
Leipzig. Yeah. No, wait. Live in Leipzig was before, but it was released after DMDS.
Okay.
Well, I think
Or
it was
might-
floating
yeah.
around as a bootleg before too, because I know
Yeah.
Fenris talks about that as one of the most important early black metal ones.
The thing with De Mysterious is all of the experimental edges which they were looking to indulge but didn't really do it properly came out on that record. And of course, Dead was the legendary vocalist, was dead for a while. And
Maybe for a while.
they no, bit of gallows humor there to liven things up.
Yeah.
Even though
Yes.
black metal probably wasn't truly like seen as a foundational thing in the wider metal scene by that point, considering they didn't have a vocalist to bring into the studio when they recorded, I think it was 93 when they finally recorded De Mysterious, they drafted in a classic member of a pre-second wave band. They got Attila Sihar from Tormentor to come in.
I was going to say that
vocals.
album as well. That album is really good.
I know that there's kind of this argument between Mayhem purists or traditionalists who say that Dead was really the spirit of that band. He was the true vocalist for that band, and that maybe Attila's voice didn't suit what they wanted to hear on that album. But he brought this very, very eerie, dark, shamanic, and at times operatic sound to that record.
But I like how Harry put it. It sounds like there's a vampire singing on the album. Like, it's so inhuman.
Well, yeah, and him being Hungarian fits that as well.
It sounds like something Beavis and Butthead would say. It's like, "Whoa, he sounds like a vampire."
Yeah, but it's true. He does. He sounds like this, like this fucking creature that's arisen from the grave in Transylvania.
But that's what works so great for it, though, because it complements the atmosphere of the album throughout. Like, I know there's certain points when there's particular things where kind of like it can take you out of it for a moment or so, but on the whole, I genuinely think Attila's vocals really, really complement the atmosphere of that album.
The general production of that album is
perfect
well because the guitars have this, they're very clear, you can discern all the riffs, but they have this very, very dark reverberative tone. And then the bass is quite audible. It has this nice dark fuzz that's simmering underneath the guitars. And Hellhammer's drums, not only is it great drum performance, but there's just this lovely echo on everything and lots of lovely syncopation. And it's the same kind of drumming you can hear on early albums by Enslaved and also classics like Pure Holocaust by Immortal. Another thing as well is that people always try to say, you know, this cliche about Norwegian black metal that it's very mystical, it's very romanticist sounding. All of the major bands in that movement, and Mayhem being one of them, recorded their albums at the Edvard Grieg Memorial Hall. So Edvard Grieg was a classical composer who did an opera called Peer Gynt, and a lot of the Norwegian musicians, so Euronymous Vågvikernes, the guys out of Emperor, all use that venue in honor of Edvard Grieg and the fact that he was a well-renowned Norwegian composer, kind of as a, maybe as a sort of homage, but it was also where Pitten, the main producer of a lot of those records, engineered a lot of that material. And De Mysterious is one of those examples. It's also quite of an edgy record in the fact that it's got a murderer and a murder victim playing on the same record as well.
And all the lyrics, or most of the lyrics, were written by a suicide victim.
Yeah.
Yep, and also the drumming was done by an avowed glam metal fan.
That's the worst of the lot.
Controversial thing.
That's the only unforgivable one. There.
I mean, if people like to status signal in the metal community, as probably people might have done in the 80s, which was seen as being this golden age of chicks, muscle cars, and chads. And then people might reflect on Norwegian black metal and say, look at those nerds. None of those people could ever get laid. But
just watch Lords of Chaos, bro.
There's a really, really hilarious clip that Varg Vikernes did where he was talking and reminiscing about the days in the Black Circle, the days when he was recording Burzum's early work, the days of being in Mayhem. And he was talking about each individual member. When he went on to talking about Hellhammer, he said that him and the band members left Euronymous for a while and went their separate ways before regrouping. When he talked about Hellhammer, he was saying, Hellhammer, in his own words, decided to leave to go to Oslo to fuck sluts. Not in a very approving fashion, of course, but there is a really funny archival photo you can find of Hellhammer, and he's just sitting down on a couch and he's wearing a rat wife beater top.
Nice.
He loves showing off those guns, didn't he?
Yeah.
Must have been something about drummers. You ever see the pictures of Chris Witchhunter where he's wearing like the leopard print trousers with the Motley Crue sleeveless shirt? It's around the time of Obsessed by Cruelty too, I think.
I think every country's metal scene just has its own Tommy Lee.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Varg, I was telling you, watching a podcast about the Morklad podcast about he was talking to the girl that did all the artwork for a lot of early bands and designed Enslaved's logo and Satyrcon's logo and all this. But she was going about the first time she met Varg because, you know, she did the artwork for him and they were like friends for a while or whatever. And she said the first time she met him, it was at a party and like he was just sitting on the ground in the middle of the party with like a brown leather jacket on. And he had like a bunch of shit like yogurts and bananas. And he would just take it out and start eating it on the floor of this like full-blown party. And like everyone's like, what the fuck is this lad doing?
I wonder if it's the same.
And she also said that he was an insanely good dungeon master as well.
I won't name him, but
terrible at writing
I've seen someone
game,
in the Dublin scene do basically that. Sitting in the middle of a session eating, it was gummy bears and ice cream in this guy's case, and he pulled out of his pocket like half-melted ice cream in a tub.
Nice.
I wonder if that was the same house party where Abath pointed a gun in Varg's face because Varg called him Fatso.
That sounds fucking brilliant.
They were like 14 at the time.
Before we depart from De Mysterious, another thing I noted down about that album earlier on was I'd almost consider that like a bookend to the classic heavy metal eras, beginning with maybe like Stained Class and Overkill and bands like albums like that in the late 70s, and then De Mysterious is sort of the last black metal album that was recorded before the murders and the church burnings and everything in it, and black metal sort of became this big media circus, and all of a sudden every like shitty death metal band in Europe and everyone who read Kerrang was forming their own black metal bands and they were really into it. So De Mysterious was sort of like the last album to come out of that as a genuine underground organic thing that was sort of in the same tradition as the old Bay Area bands within the Wabam of like the Germanic thrash and whatever. It was all kind of tied into that, and that sort of I'd almost see that as when that ended with De Mysterious and Euronymous' death.
I'll throw in something here, actually talking about a modern day debut album. as when we're talking there about the atmosphere in that album, it's mysticism, it's romanticism, the vampiric kind of atmosphere of it. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce this because my Slovakian sucks, but the Malakapartan debut.
Oh
Yeah, definitely
Oh,
great
Jesus,
record. Yeah,
It's probably the best black metal record of the last 10 years.
Yeah, I
I think
think
it's a
so.
fair assessment.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I like
yeah.
Occult Burial better, actually. Sort of like Black Speed stuff. or
Yeah, the
whatever.
newest
But
Occult
in terms
Burial
of
is
more
fucking
like
insane.
90s sounding black metal, I'd definitely say Malakapartan.
Mm. But it's something that's been, yeah, and there's been bands, in the interim that have been very, have a lot of integrity, and everything's done organically, and they've had their own style, and it's not done in a showy kind of way of, oh, we need to stand out,
Mhm.
Malakapartan are just putting into music what they're like as people, what their country's like.
Mm.
It's a romantic, but also a very kind of harsh, realistic, but also fantastical at the same time. Magical realism is what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah. It's folkloric. It's very like
Yeah,
sort of
folkloric. And there's plenty of bands,
peasant metal
exactly, and there's plenty
in
of
the
bands
most
that have done that
complimentary
in the
way
interim as well.
possible.
But I think they're the best example I can think of in the last 10 years. There's other, other great bands I need to mention here. Denial of God.
Yeah, definitely. Denial of God are
Who
great.
are we talking about there that we saw in Limerick? Negative Flame.
I didn't put these on my list, but considering that we've just gone from De Mysteriis and we've gone to Malakapartan, and to go to a quintessential Slavic release, then I think
Master's Hammer,
Ritual by Master's Hammer is a great one. And I think Fenner is a Dark Throne said about that record is we didn't really need to create a Norwegian sound when Master's Hammer had already done it for us on Ritual.
Yeah, because that album's like 88 or 89, isn't it? And it is fully formed second wave black metal.
It's
like,
90
totally.
or 91, but they'd
Is
had
it?
a
Yeah.
lot of demos done throughout the late 1980s. And of course, they were part of a scene which also included Root and another band called Tor. So the Czech Republic at least had three bands who were quite prominent during the late 1980s, which was still under communism at that time, who were
Czechoslovakia
seen
was still at the time because it's before the Velvet Divorce in 91.
Yeah. But they were all seen as a seminal influence on bands who were going to emerge pretty much in Norway, but also countries like Greece. And of course, just after the Iron Curtain fell, then you would have had bands from Poland who'd have taken a bit of inspiration from that too.
That actually ties back into when you mentioned Attila, Sahar singing on the first Mayhem, or on the album, on The Mysterious. Do you see, I actually put this up on our group chat the other day. It was a meme that it was talking about the suicide of Mayhem's first singer. Dead was the sixth singer, so I suppose that means Attila was actually the seventh singer the band had. That's going to be a record. By the time you make your album, you're onto your seventh vocalist.
I'm sure there's a few Dublin bands that could beat that now. But yeah, I was with Pearson talking about the Greek stuff there. I think another really good mention is Die Mighty Contract by Rotting Christ. Would be an unbelievable album in my opinion. I think that along with early Necromantia and bands like Varathron and stuff like that, and Zemiel kind of have unbelievable records coming out of the Mediterranean at that time. I think Die Mighty Contract is definitely at the top. I seen them play that album in full in the Voodoo a few years ago. Must have been like 2 or 3 years ago at this point. But that was a fucking insane show, man. The way they play that old stuff in their new style, it actually kind of improves it in a way. I think it was a really, really good show.
While we're delving into black metal, I don't know how many of you have listened to it. I know John's a big fan of it anyway. The Flames of Hell debut album from Iceland.
That's a great record.
That's a brilliant record. And that's again, really early one from, I think, is it 1987? I think it's
86 or 87.
Yeah, and that's the vocals on that especially are like, they've got that same kind of like the same Count Grishnak scream that he uses on the first Burzum album. Very like high pitched, nasty sounding, and like Hellhammer riffs, like Motorheady sounding stuff. Like that's
Apparently
one of the most imaginative
apparently the band
out there black metal albums of the 80s, I think.
Apparently the band paid or they either paid or they got to use a YMCA for free to record that album.
Yeah, they closed down the
allowed in
studio in the YMCA afterwards too, apparently, because they were so horrified at the racket that had been made by them.
John, I think it was you, Pearson, this is a few years ago, made a comparison on that album to Seer Fungal, and that's never left my head because it's such a, on the face of it, bizarre comparison, but it really, really does fit.
Yeah, definitely. I just have Frost and Fire running through my head now, and you can definitely hear in the vocals, especially.
Frost and Fire almost made my shortlist as well. The reason I didn't really was the other thing I was trying to do is bands where the debut is really their best, and with them it's kind of not, you know. I mean, I love all 5 Seer Fungal albums now. Actually, I think they've got one of the most flawless discographies of Brian.
Yeah, the new album was really good, actually.
Actually going to mention another one there on the basis that it combines the very primitive with the experimental. And some people would debate, is this a debut? Is it not a debut? It'd be Drawing Down the Moon by Beherit from 1993.
Oh, yeah, great choice.
I'd say that qualifies, given that, you know, The Oath of Black Blood was just a compilation of the EP and the demo, I think.
Yeah, it technically is.
Yeah.
But that combines very thick, primitive, sludgy riffs and a lot of blasting in the tradition of Sarcophago and a lot of these very cryptic, grunted, echoing vocals and this very, very clever use of synthesizer and not excessive, but it's like using harmony in this really, really eerie fashion. And that band would under Marco Leo, they'd eventually go into full-blown ambient music, and they did it pretty well, actually. But they've always been a benchmark band for combining the extremely primitive end of the subgenre and then also the very, very avant-garde sensibilities without coming across in any way overblown, contrived, or overly pretentious.
Yeah, I think maybe moving into more of the experimental avant-garde. I don't know if many people notice. I know John and Paddy definitely are fans of this record, but I could, you know, I don't think Chris would like it very much. But I think that Vedbunzenda's debut record is really important in terms of music.
It's very, very good.
It's really great, really good album, yeah. In terms of, you know,
it's not King's North approved though. So I
that definitely is not King's North approved. But I think songs like Autumn Leaves and especially this record along with Oliver's debut album are like probably some of my favorite. Oliver's debut. Great. Yeah,
I was just gonna mention it actually.
Yeah, it's such a great combination of, you know, black metal, you know, Norwegian traditional music. You know, I think that and neo-folk as well in elements, which they eventually would go full blown with Kveldstanger the next year the next year. You know, brilliant album. I think you know, the concept thing. They were like 17 or something when they wrote that album. Like it's insane that they did that. So those two albums are very important.
That's one of the crazy things about like a lot of the great bands from that Norwegian scene in particular at the time was how young they were making a lot of that insane music. Like Enslaved is a brilliant example.
Yeah, I was blown away when I was watching that Enslaved documentary. That the guitarist, I think when they did the Yggdrasil demo, was like 15 years old, if even, and it's brilliant.
Well, yeah, when he originally joined the band, he was only 13.
Yeah.
It's crazy, like.
Yeah.
Like, anyway, we should probably let.
Oh, by the way, another one just before we go off Enslaved. Did you know he got the idea for wearing that ridiculous executioner's hood from Sodom in The Sign of Evil? That massively like increased my respect for Enslaved. Yes.
Oh, damn it. I thought he got it from El Duce.
It was from In the Sign of Evil, but he was also saying that after he had that picture on the back of an album cover, he had like loads of women like sending him letters and whatever that thought he was into like mad BDSM shit because he was wearing the executioner's hood, and that's why he stopped doing it.
That is hilarious. But yeah, I think we've talking over Emmett as much, so I think
No,
he should
you're
start
all right.
giving-
Jesus,
You're
yeah,
all
I
sorry,
think he should,
yeah,
I think
I was
he should start
actually-
giving his now.
No,
I think
I'm
we've been
not.
just
I'm,
hogging it
I'm
there.
not going to even lie. A good 2/3 of my list was gone already now throughout other people's
Well, to be
mentions.
fair,
There was-
there's a big one that you love that we haven't talked about yet. So
we
Yeah,
actually
well,
haven't
like,
touched, in my opinion, the most important one possibly ever.
yes,
which
which I
one?
think we should talk about
But
now.
Welcome to Hell.
Welcome to Hell and Bathory's debut, I think, are
yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was my number one with the bullet. I'm looking at 4 copies of it here on the shelf, and it's my backpack.
I'm holding one myself.
No, but to be honest with you, I have such a fucking fondness for that album just because that is literally my entry into like everything. Actually, I didn't even listen to like fucking like shit clicky sounding American death metal or anything before hearing the Battery album. I actually funny
lucky.
story. But funny story about that album was like when I probably would have been about 17 or 18 when I first heard that. And I was going through my fucking abysmal, like fucking thrash phase. Like I had a fucking Skullfist back patch and everything. That was how bad it was at the time. And
Sorry,
was
I used to have
anyway-
municipal waste patches on my vest.
we won't hold it against you, lads.
No, but like
We're just
I
older
remember-
than you, Paddy.
I can't say shit. I've had some awful shite on mine as well over the years. So
No, but I was thinking back to that because I remember there was a period of about 6 months I actively stopped trying to find new bands because this would have been around 2015, 2016, and it was like, do you remember it was like the tail end of like that new wave of thrash metal where it was all copy paste, like
Jesus.
Gamma logos and fucking toxic barrels, and
beer,
zombies
pizza,
and
beer.
yeah,
I
but
was
then it went into fucking shite, like what's that band called? Enforcer and
Skullfist.
shit. Yeah, like man, that shit
yeah.
sucks.
But see, that was it.
I remember
and, like,
around-
literally, there was so many copy paste bands for such a long time. I was just like, oh fuck this. And I hadn't gotten. I hate using this term now, but I'd never kind of dipped into extreme metal law, like black metal, death metal, or anything like that. And I remember Jack, just before we were living together, was bugging the shit out of me for fucking months. We were both studying in this college in Limerick. And literally, this was like Jack was in his proper Battery Hellhammer worship phase. He was wearing like cowboy boots into college. He had a mustache. He made a new battle jacket that was all like fucking extreme ends and everything like that. But he was telling me for months like to listen to the fucking Hellhammer demos and to listen to the Battery debut. And I like listening to that album was like, listen to music for the first time for me. It was just like it fucking totally blew my mind, like, in the same way that listening to the first Maiden album as well, which was one I only thought about during this that wasn't mentioned, was the Maiden debut as well. Because
I'm surprised we haven't yet, actually.
I only realized that halfway through. And see, I'm cautious of time now too, because I was thinking there's 101 albums we could have touched on. But,
Yeah, true.
I'm using like 2 separate things to record this, right? And I don't think you believe me when I tell you this. We've been talking for over 2.5 hours.
Jesus.
Yeah, and that's
Fucking hell.
yeah.
Emma,
and
we
I
didn't
kinda-
start recording until
Bastards
9
don't
now,
have
so
to
it's just
listen to
about
all
3.
of that.
Yeah, true,
So
true.
I'm kind of thinking now at this stage, I think we're going to have to revisit this at another stage because, like, just from listening to like your thoughts and stuff throughout, we could go for another 2.5 hours here. Like,
Oh,
you know what I mean?
easily, man.
Yeah.
And I'd say the cyber pub after this will be doing that now.
No, that's it.
Oh, you know, I'm like 4 cans deep. I'll keep going now.
But though you need to cut out that like 10 minutes where they were talking about shite death albums for some reason. So that'll
Yeah, probably actually, yeah.
Yeah,
Even
so
on the
I'd say-
Middle Road
but I'd
stuff.
say-
No, there's nothing wrong with a bit of bashing death. That's always good.
No, so what I'd say we'll do for now is I'd say we can leave this episode for now at that because there's so much in that, like, do you know what I mean? Between
Definitely,
between doing an intro and stuff, it's going to be touching on about 3 hours. So I'd say we'll leave
Fuck
that
no.
for today as well. Now, genuine cheers for all of you for coming on, and we'll definitely
Yeah, no,
have
worries,
thanks
man.
for the invite, man. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate
Sam
it.
for
It was
having
good
us on.
crack.
Thanks very
Good
much.
crack. It was
Not
good
a
crack.
bother, but what I was going to say before we sign off is We'll have to do a part 2 with this in the next few weeks. Like, 'cause there's so much. Okay, and that was part 1 of our panel discussion around favorite debuts in the history of metal. I want to again extend a sincere thank you to all the lads who hopped on last Friday for the recording of that. And again, like I mentioned at the start, we will have a part 2. It'll be in a few weeks' time. I want to give a bit of breathing space to the lads and stuff like that, and see what more kind of names we can bring up and stuff like that. And there was, as we touched on at the end, a few glaring omissions that we left out and stuff like that. I think we were overly cautious beforehand of all of us crossing over with kind of big enough ones. So I think everyone kind of deep rooted a little bit of more kind of obscure choices and stuff like that, which was fantastic. And hopefully that gives a little bit of kind of food for thought and maybe some names to check out that you mightn't have known about before, which is kind of part and parcel of why we're all into this metal crack in the first place. So yeah, again, a sincere thank you to all the lads for hopping on for that. Very much looking forward to doing part 2 in a few weeks' time. And yeah, if you enjoyed it, let us know, because there's more of those panels to come. Different guests, different topics, I should say, from stuff directly relating to metal, kind of like sonically, and then other more contemporary issues around kind of like people's relationships with metal and things within the wider metal community as a whole too. I won't specify what exactly yet, as they have yet to be recorded. I nearly went on a waffling tangent, I didn't, thank God. So yeah, I'm going to end this one now with a little bit more housekeeping. If you enjoyed that and you enjoy the podcast and you want to be sound, you want to help, follow us over on Instagram at From the Depths Metal, and follow us over on Facebook at From the Depths Metal Radio. As well as that, you can check us out every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Wired 99.9 FM for From the Depths, your weekly midweek dose of metal over on the old radio wireless box thing. And yeah, that's all the housekeeping out of the way. That's all that crack done. And lads, that is the end of episode 7 of the From the Depths podcast. As always, my name's been Emmett, and yeah, guys, I'll catch you next Monday for another episode of the show. Good night and God bless.